We got everyone ready, Council? All right, good evening, everyone. I appreciate you being here tonight. I hereby call the Palm Springs Regular City Council meeting of October 12th, 2023 to order. Today, we are joined by Natasha Signore. She's a junior at Palm Springs High School. She also is on the softball team and was captain and the MVP last year. So thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Natasha. It is Palm Springs High School's homecoming week. Next week, the parade is Wednesday, October 21st at 3:30 p.m. So it was nice to have a Palm Springs High School student be here today. City Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
Councilmember DeHart.
Here.
Councilmember Hostich.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein.
Here.
Mayor Gardner.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you very much. We're going to start off our meeting today with Tom Dole. He'll be presenting the Sunrise Park 50th anniversary. Take it away, Tom.
Mayor Garner and City Council members for this opportunity.
I'm a regular swimmer at the swim center, and this project started when I realized how many people had no idea we had a swim center or where it was. The need for signage was real, but I wanted to learn more about all of Sunrise Park. So I did some extensive research and discovered some very interesting historical information that led to this larger initiative. After showing this presentation in various forms over the past few months to civic leaders, both within government and in outside organizations, I got some great feedback that I incorporated into the presentation. Although this started with an idea I had, it really became a group vision that reflects some wider concerns of the community as we confront the future of our parks. This is the shorter form for public viewing, and there is a longer form available with even more detailed information and history. I should add that this is coming from a private citizen as an unsolicited and unpaid initiative that I hope may help to jumpstart a process that should be city-led. Sunrise Park, a central park in the heart of Palm Springs. The block bounded by Sunrise on the west, Barristo on the north, Ramon on the south, and the high school on the east. This is the largest concentration of recreational facilities and the largest historic campus of public buildings by prominent Palm Springs architects. It has the most natural shade of any city park. It's the only park with direct access to stores, restaurants, and coffee shops. Oops, sorry. Can we go back one? Ah, there we go. It was the Polo Grounds, a little history, it was the Polo Grounds before it was Sunrise Park. Built in 1950 with funds from a $400,000 bond issue, it included the following facilities: a baseball stadium, a horse track and paddocks, which was the site of the Desert Circus and Rodeo, and the Pavilion Community Center, which was a former 1941 roller rink by John Porter Clark. The Polo Grounds were really the center of the cowboy culture of the times of equestrian activities. Proposition R bond issue was passed by the voters in November 1972. It was $5 million of general obligation bonds for an ambitious plan to expand community recreation in response to a 1972 study. It would include, on the Polo Grounds, to build a new community pavilion, a public library, a community recreation center, a swim complex, and park landscaping. Francis Stevens School would be purchased, and they would create a senior center and park. DeMuth Park would be enlarged by 40 acres with new lighted Little League fields. Desert Highland Park would be enlarged by 5 acres with a new community recreation building, and bicycle trails would be built throughout the city. High-profile local architects created a master plan for the park. Prominent architect William Cody, as city architect, headed the Palm Springs collaborative team of 9 local architects, including Donald Wexler, Richard Harrison, Hugh Capter, and Michael Black. Added to the team were landscape architects David Hamilton and Michael Buccino. Everything opened to great fanfare in 1975. Despite high inflation, cutbacks, and delays, all facilities were delivered as promised and opened with parties, community events, and celebrations. This is Sunrise Park, right at the end of construction. This is looking east from Sunrise. And you can see, starting at the top, we have the Swim Center by Hugh Capter, the Pavilion and Leisure Center by Donald Wexler. Down in the bottom right is the original fire station by Clark and Frey from 1950 that was later converted into the Mizell Center. The Boys Club, which became the Boys and Girls Club, which was built in 1958. The original pavilion in the center bottom there, which was done in 1941 by John Porter Clark, that was torn down shortly after this picture was taken. And the library to the left, William Cody. And that small building on the left side there is the Dr. Frey J.C. building, 1966 by C.W. Doty, and the stadium, which existed from the Polo Grounds of 1950. This visionary expansion of public recreation throughout the city, designed by prominent local architects and centered in Sunrise Park, was supported and celebrated by the Palm Springs community. It helped secure a reputation as a premier resort city. But years of neglect and deferred maintenance have taken their toll. The Pavilion and Leisure Center are shabby, showing their age, not upgraded, and underutilized. The landscaping is tired, mostly turf, and non-sustainable. There is inadequate identity signage and non-existent directional signage. This is an example of some of the confusing and inadequate signage. We have 3 different monument signs for the library with 3 different names for the library. We have the Palm Springs Library Center, the Sunrise Plaza Library Center, and the Palm Springs Public Library. This is the main entrance to Sunrise Park. You would never know that because there's no sign or marking to show you that. It's a dead-end street called Pavilion Way that comes off of Baristo, and it is totally unmarked. There's no visual identity. There's vast expanses of empty lawn, bland tombstone-like signage, hard-to-find entrances, inadequate directional signage, and poorly placed public art that don't convey a welcoming space for public recreation. So I've come up with this 4-part vision to renew Sunrise Park. Not just me, but the other people that were involved in this process as well. Number 1, historical protection. Number 2, sustainability and solar. Number 3, better signage and identity. And number 4, restoration, renovation, and adaptive reuse. So first, historical protection. A Sunrise Park historic district. With a rich history in the city's culture since the 1920s and 9 significant structures by prominent local architects, Sunrise Park is the largest campus of its kind and a unique historical asset that should be celebrated and protected. Historic designation opens the door to state and federal grants and foundation and private funding opportunities. Number 2, sustainability and solar. Create a modern desert landscape. Let's establish Sunrise Park as a leader in sustainability. Strategic turf removal, desert landscaping, tree planting along the perimeter of the park, and shade structures. And then we can extend that program to other parks in the system. Let's put the sun in Sunrise Park. Create shade and generate power via solar roofs, parking lots, and shade structures at the pool. There were actually 3 previous proposals in the 1970s to use solar installations for pool heating, and the technology has advanced considerably since then. And pool heating may be one of the largest fossil fuel uses of any of the city facilities. 3, better signage and identity. The first step of that is new perimeter landscaping to define the park. It would identify and define the park, make it more appealing, create shade for the sidewalks, and contribute to sustainability. Give the park a visual identity. Attractive identity and informational signage in landscaped beds would have a dramatic and immediate impact on the perception of the park. That includes a map of the park and some historical information that could also be posted as part of that. Let's make a real mark for the entrance. New directional signage on Barista will highlight the main entrance to Sunrise Park at Pavilion Way, which is actually the main entrance to all the facilities and the parking lot. Let's also create some highly visible Ramon Road signage, install a new monument sign, and add a swim center wall mural, and re-landscape the area in attractive desertscape. There's a large blank wall on the outside of the swimming pool, and that is probably the most visible part of the park to traffic. Number 4, restoration, renovation, and adaptive reuse. Rethink the pavilion and leisure center. Transform the pavilion into a first-class, flexible, multi-use entertainment and community space with modern lighting, sound system, acoustics, and flexible seating. Although there are local theaters and venues with seating, there is no local venue that has flexible, non-fixed seating. The park's master plan process opens the door to large-scale planning. The community's input will help create a vision for the future. Issues such as climate change, water in the parks, needed renovations or new facilities, safety and maintenance can be addressed. The results should lead to a push for major reinvestment throughout the park system. And what future role will Sunrise Park play in this overall park system? So part 2 of this is a proposal to create a 2025 citywide celebration that marks this historic 1975 contribution to public recreation. 2025 is Sunrise Park's 50th anniversary. A celebration can connect disparate park projects and events. It's a 2-year opportunity to clean up the parks, increase visibility and awareness. It reacquaints the community to the importance of our public spaces. It's inclusive of the entire community, all age groups, all socioeconomic groups, arts, architecture, sports, outdoor enthusiasts. And it's a catalyst to propel significant future investment throughout the park system, informed by results of this master plan process. So to create that celebration, let's create a branded citywide parks festival. Include diverse programming to engage the community, build on the larger theme of public recreation, and pursue major sponsorship opportunities. 2025 is a unique opportunity to kick off a vision for the future while honoring the past. So this whole project involves probably almost every city department. Certainly some are more important than others, but it really does involve everyone kind of coming together and doing their part of it, from the city council on down to Office of the Neighborhoods, and also forgot to include here the Parks and Rec Commission, which would be an important part of that as well. This presentation has been presented to a number of organizations listed here and met with enthusiastic support. There are a lot of architecture and preservation groups, as well as People for the Parks and other private groups. They all expressed interest in being involved in propelling this initiative forward in some way. So to end this, I want to leave this quote. Our predecessors had the vision to greatly expand and support public parks and recreation. Let's celebrate that achievement and continue the legacy for today's community and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Really appreciate that. Do we have some comments or questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Holstage. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I think this is terrific, and I know that our council has been very focused on the parks in the last 4 years. our mayor ran on that, the campaign, and we've probably done more in the last 4 years than we've done, I would say, in the 20 years before that, but I'm actually not sure everything that had been done. So, but I love this idea of a renewed focus on Sunrise Park and involving the different organizations that are there and setting 2025. We'll have a lot of stuff that will be in the works or in process, and some projects that will be completed. Like I know we have some at the swim center and some new lighting at the recreation fields. But and obviously this is the 2025 not everything would be finished. We'll still be in the midst of our library. We do have this big parks master plan. We have the RFP that should be back soon. And I would like council to set this as a real initiative, as a focus to really move forward with 2025 and to see what we can be doing for Sunrise Park and also our other parks as well. But this seems like a really specific thing we can latch onto. And I really appreciate all the work that went into it. It's a fascinating history of Palm Springs. It's very interesting how this was funded through a bond measure. But it's especially interesting that it brought together all these different groups in Palm Springs. And I think our neighborhood parks are things which really should have a focus of our council, of our residents. It's great for residents and visitors, and certainly our everyone from kids to our seniors. So I support setting 2025 as a real goal to create an initiative. I have to figure out exactly how to do that, but I'm willing to help.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologize for going out of order. I just wanted the Mayor Pro Tem to speak first because he's been working on this and prioritizing this, and I so appreciate you bringing this forward to Council. Thank you to Tom for your work on this. I already had your presentation when we met one-on-one, and I said, wait, you're a private citizen who just cares about the parks and is this passionate and presenting great ideas for us to consider. So really appreciate you lending your expertise, especially in graphic design and branding and all of those things that we want to include in our parks to modernize them. So I love the idea. I also support moving this forward to have a celebration of Sunrise Park, and the ideas that you laid out I think are really fantastic. I also see that, or when I met you, I also raised other parts of the park, like the Sunrise Park Center, like the playground where I spend most of my time at Sunrise Park. You know, we have the Boys and Girls Club, Senior Center, skate park, so many facilities. It really could be a wonderful amenity for all of our residents if we invest in it in the right way. I also see that People for Palm Springs Parks is here, which is a newly formed organization supporting and advocating for investments in the parks and in rec programs. And so hope we can all work together. It's amazing to have so many people who care about the future of our parks, providing amenities for our residents, especially low cost and free amenities. I really appreciate you considering the future of our parks and climate change and increasing temperatures and how to make it more sustainable. I think that's really important too as we reimagine Sunrise Park. We have been working on it for a number of years, reimagining that park and investing in it because it can be such a benefit to our residents. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for your leadership on this. Thank you to Tom for all of the staff work, unpaid and volunteered. Really appreciate it, and I'm really proud to support this coming forward.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. And Tom, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for the work. I thoroughly support moving forward with this, but what we know is we're going to need to identify someone who is going to be the lead on this project. We need to identify a group of people who are going to be responsible for managing this initiative, and we're going to need budgets. So I support it, but I want us to, as promptly as we can, ask staff to come back to us with recommendations as to what would be an action plan that would allow us to create the structure so that we can move forward.
Thank you very much. Councilmember DeHart.
Tom, I echo everybody's support and appreciation for the work you did. And just so the community knows, we've worked and seen this presentation prior to tonight, so it's been something we've been able to absorb. I love the idea. I want to know where I can get one of the orange T-shirts. I think there's only 14 months to go, right, between now and 2025. So a lot has to be done to make the celebration come off. As Councilmember Middleton said, some of those logistical and operational steps, I definitely would like to see that come back to council so we know what we're looking at. The rest of the presentation, the Renew Sunrise Park portion, I really would like to see that combined with the master plan work that's that we're undertaking now. I think it's imperative that we don't double efforts, but we focus on the master plan that's coming and really look at the big picture of not just Sunrise Park, but all of our parks in this master plan redevelopment. But I do love the idea of a 50th anniversary celebration. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tom, for doing this. And it's been quite the slog to get us to this point with our parks. I remember running and having people ask me why I cared about the parks. So it's really nice to see groups forming to support the parks. It's really nice to see residents taking initiative to do this work, because for the last 4 years, it's been a lot of just figuring out how to get basic amenities fixed, to get caught up to where we need to be in terms of regular maintenance, and we're still not quite there yet. So getting getting a groundswell of support from the community and really moving forward on this is important. And I look forward to being able to use that momentum as we do our Parks Master Plan and hopefully have a big celebration in the park at Sunrise Park, which is really cool. All right, we're going to move to just one more thing. We did give a proclamation in honor of Code Enforcement Officer Appreciation Week, which is this week. And so I just want to invite Mitch Nabhan to give comment now instead of later.
Thank you, Mayor Garner and honorable members of our City Council. My name is Mitch Nabhan. I'm one of the code compliance supervisors here in our city. On behalf of the entire code compliance team, a few of whom have joined me this evening, I wish to express our sincere appreciation for this recognition. We are deeply honored and grateful for your support and this acknowledgement of Code Enforcement Appreciation Week. While the role of a code compliance officer is broad and specific duties can vary depending on the jurisdiction or municipality, our team understands that our mission is not just to enforce codes and regulations, but to actively contribute to the betterment of our community. The work we do goes beyond inspections and citations. It's about building safer neighborhoods, preserving property values, enhancing the quality of life, and fostering community harmony. Our team is committed to ensuring that our city remains like no place else, and one that our residents feel proud to call home. We also want to express our sincere appreciation for the trust that you, our City Council, place in us. This recognition is a reminder that our efforts are valued, and it motivates us to continue striving for excellence. We will remain diligent in our duty to enforce our city's codes and regulations in a fair and equitable manner. This acknowledgement is not just a testament to the hard work of our code compliance officers, but also to the support and collaboration that we receive from our community and fellow city departments. The cooperation from our community and partnerships with our fellow city staff play a crucial role in the success of our department, and together we ensure our neighborhoods and businesses are safe, healthy, and vibrant places to live, work, and play. In conclusion, I'm happy to accept this recognition on behalf of the hardworking men and women of our Code Compliance Department who work tirelessly every day to preserve the beauty and vitality of our neighborhoods, ensuring that our community remains safe, healthy, and prosperous for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, Mitch, can you introduce the other members of the team
Sure,
who are
absolutely.
behind you?
So this is Officer Jason Whitaker. Officer Jonathan Ingram, and Officer Corey Pictionary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate. Got some applause there. Thank you all so much for the work that you do. And I know that often when you're interacting with the public, it's not always pleasant because people are a little bit upset when they reach out to you. And we get lots and lots of follow-up emails from residents who tell us that they've had great experiences with our code enforcement team. So thank you so much for being calm under pressure. Really appreciate that. All right, at this time, we will accept, The City Council will discuss the order of our agenda, may amend the order, add urgency items, note abstentions or no votes on consent calendar items, or request consent calendar items be removed for a separate discussion. I'd like to entertain a motion for acceptance of the agenda. Are there any items that staff or a council member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and or a vote? I know Mayor Pro Tem has a couple things.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to pull 1E as an echo. And I would also like to ask that we add to the agenda a emergency resolution of City Council condemning the appalling acts of terrorism by Hamas against the State of Israel.
Thank you very much. City Attorney, can you please direct us on how to add that to the agenda?
Yes, with respect to that second item, it'd be appropriate if the council is so inclined to make a finding that this item came to the attention of the city council, which as the world knows it did, and that there is an immediate need to take action before the next regular meeting. If that passes by a 4/5 vote, then the item can be added as a consent calendar item or as a business and legislative item. And at that time, I believe Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein will be prepared to explain to the council kind of what the resolution says and the purpose for it.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. I'd like to second that motion. Thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein for bringing this forward.
Thank you very much. And if we can have a roll call vote, please. This is just to accept the item. We'll discuss it at a later time.
Councilmember DeHart.
Yes.
Councilmember Holstage.
Yes.
Councilmember Middleton. Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein. Mayor Gardner.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we will vote on the acceptance of the agenda with the removal of item 1E and the addition of the emergency resolution. See a motion and a second. I think we can use our screens to vote for this one. Maybe, if it works. Yes. Lisa. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Middleton. All right, thank you, 5-0. City Attorney Ballinger, if you can please report on closed session.
Yes, honorable mayor, members of the City Council. The City Council met in closed session and discussed one of the two items that is listed on the agenda, and that is the Section 14 reparations claim, and is expected to go back into closed session after the open session. Otherwise, there was no reportable action.
Thank you very much. The next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on non-public hearing agenda items only. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. You're asked to please begin your time by telling us what agenda item or items you're speaking about. Please note that testimony for public hearings will be taken at the time of the public hearing, and general public comment for subjects not on the agenda will be taken later in the evening. If there's any written handouts that you wish to distribute to the City Council, please hand those over to the City Clerk, and she will distribute them at a later date. We will start with David Feltman, followed by Catherine Hatch.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city staff, Palm Springs residents and staff. I'm David Feltman. I am here to sort of introduce and represent, in part with my colleagues, a new organization called People for the Parks. We were thrilled to hear the presentation by Tom Dahl on a plan for the future of Sunrise Park. Our mission is inclusive but broader than that. We are here to rally anybody and everybody who is enthusiastic about having a park system and recreational facilities that are worthy of our great city. We think collaboratively we can do great things for the city and for the future for all of our families in Palm Springs. We're particularly interested in the social equity aspect of our parks and ensuring that our middle income, lower income, and affluent and everybody else of all stripes are given the opportunity to use the great facilities that we will develop over time, including the ones that are in process now that are being worked on. And just, we know that each and every one of you have made some positive statement about parks, either at the council or during your campaigns. And we just ask that you sort of totally lean into making this happen, working with city staff, really making the next period of years a transformational time in this city. I think we will benefit from it economically and for the good of the community if we do that together. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Hatch, followed by Naomi Soto.
Hi, good evening. My name is Catherine Hatch, and I'm really excited to be here and excited to be part of People for Palm Springs Parks. I moved here 3 years ago from Brooklyn. My husband and I have 3 sons, and we live here full time. And I'm really excited to be a part of a group that is going to encourage some much needed improvement in the city's public parks. Through our work so far, it seems as though there are a variety of issues impeding such improvements, and we hope to work collaboratively to help shed light on such problems and to make change possible. The state of our parks does not match the image of Palm Springs as a global tourist destination. I'm happy to hear about the emphasis on Sunrise Park from Tom. Sunrise Park, for example, should be a beacon among parks. It's home to the Boys and Girls Club adjacent to the high school, baseball field, skate park, swim center, senior center, and library. However, it's quite the opposite. I know many parents that have stopped taking their young children there anymore because of its conditions, specifically the unhoused population who are often there and the accompanying drug activity that's too close for comfort to where young children play. Sunrise is run down, unclean, unsafe, and it does not present a welcoming environment for our children, and this extends to many of our parks. I personally stopped taking my children to Sunrise as I've witnessed drug dealing taking place and one violent argument between 2 unhoused individuals while with my children. No other public parks in the valley have this issue so acutely as Palm Springs does. Even Cat City's playgrounds and bathrooms are clean, and they even have shade and water features. Palm Springs playgrounds, by contrast, are outdated, unshaded, unsafe, and unclean, particularly the bathrooms. This needs to change. I understand we have a lot of wonderful, large-scale future plans for the parks that are very exciting. However, in the interim, we must work to provide, at a minimum, clean, safe, and well-maintained parks for the enjoyment and accessibility of the people, especially the growing community of families here. These are families that might not have the resources to visit other safer playgrounds or leave for the summer to escape the heat. The park should be a place for everyone to comfortably gather. I'm hoping that we can work together constructively to truly make a difference so that our parks better represent this beautiful city. Thank you.
Thank you. Naomi Soto, followed by Brad Anderson.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, and my fellow residents. My name is Naomi Soto. I'm a District 4 resident. I'm chair of the Metro J Commission. I'm a mom of 2 small children. In today's capacity, I'm here as one of the founding members of People for Palm Springs Park, a new organization focused on our public parks and recreational spaces. I want to start by saying thank you for encouraging this important conversation on parks and recreational space, for being receptive to the idea of the work that looks like we're going to take on in the next couple years around the celebration. I'm also super grateful to Tom Dole for his extensive work around Sunrise Park and for really being a champion for that space. And I just want to kind of echo that this is something that has been coming to us. It's a broader conversation that has been percolating for years, a lot from your leadership, a lot from parents who have been, parents and caregivers who have been pushing this for several years as well. We've come a long way since I moved to the desert 12 years ago, and I'm excited for this enthusiasm. Just a few additional thoughts around the parks. I just really want to stress that while we're being visionary, celebratory, that we're also focused on maintenance, on safety, on kind of the basic nuts and bolts of safe public recreational space. Right now, there are broken slides. There's zero functional water play structures. There's basic cleanliness issues that could be addressed in 60 days. It would make a difference to families and other people who use these spaces. And I also want to encourage kind of an era of visibility so that swimmers, parents, teenagers, people just have an understanding as to what the city is doing and how hard you're all working to make this happen. There's a lot of conversations happening in silos, and it would be great to have a collective space, a collective data on what those investments mean. Because what I'm really hoping for is a new generation, a new time of multi-generational use in our public spaces. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Brad Anderson, followed by Jason Kravets.
Hi. Thank you. My name is Brad Anderson. I currently live in the city of Ransom Mirage. I'm going to speak on items 1A and 3A this evening. First, 1A, that's the remote meeting aspect. I guess I urge you again to avoid that and stop doing that meeting process, and consider putting the text of that Assembly Bill 361 in your staff report so residents can read it and see how illegal it is. And on 3A, that's concerning the license plate readers that you want to install. I'm opposed to that. I live in a city that has that, and it's just so invasive, and it's just visitor pollution too when you look at them, at the freestanding ones. I think the only other city I know of in Coachella Valley that doesn't have it is the city of Coachella, and I believe the city councilor has showed support before by rallying down there. I believe it was a white supremacist or something. I think Mr. Hostries did that. And before you were elected, the mayor was down there doing that. So maybe you can show that Elias, I can't talk tonight, but support that city because they've seen the civil liability, well, they've seen the protecting the residents from this intrusive type of surveillance. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Kravets, followed by Barbara Wasserung.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. First off, I greatly exaggerated my ability to read 10 font from my notes, so please bear with me. My name's Jason Kravets. I'm a 30-year homeowner in Palm Springs. Tonight, I'm here speaking on behalf of item 3A. My perspective on the issue is a little unique because I retired as the interim police chief of Laguna Beach. And one of my projects in 2014, as I was rising through the ranks, was to install ALPR cameras at our 3 entry-exit points to the community. At the time, we were a little leery about it. We were directed by council, actually, to do it. And part of our due diligence efforts, we went up to the towns of Tiburon and Piedmont, which were the only towns outside of Anaheim that had these cameras installed. We heard amazing success stories, but we still wondered how that would affect us. So we came back, we decided to install our first camera for 1 month. It literally changed how we were policing the community. We were a little shocked at the amount of wanted people and stolen criminals that were coming into our community in the wee hours of the morning. And we even had someone come into town from FBI's most wanted list. So we ended up installing the cameras. We discovered that not only was it helping us solve crimes, but it was helping us pre-deploy our resources. So if we had, for instance, a wanted person coming into town, we were able to deploy the officers in an environment where they could make a traffic stop outside of populated areas. So for instance, our downtown area. It also allowed us to pre-deploy the spike strips, so it would prevent the vehicle from fleeing and coming into our town. With several success stories, it's not hyperbole to tell you that we literally caught, murderers, sexual assault suspects, and robbery suspects, not only from our town, but also from surrounding communities that would query our information. And the last thing on that note is it's not only a law enforcement tool, it's also used by city staff is they can query the system and see how many vehicles are on the roadways. So for instance, when your 10 freeways closed and all these cars are coming into our town, it'd be nice to know the accurate tally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara Wasserung, followed by Steve Gaboni.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Wasserkrug, and I would like to thank the Palm Springs Mayor and City Council members for allowing me to speak this afternoon on the Flock Artificial Intelligence data collecting license plate reader surveillance cameras. The police surveillance technology allows a massive number of devices communicating with each other via the artificial intelligence network at the same time, such as license plate readers, cars, cell phones, watches, etc. The escalation of connected devices provides expansive opportunities for the government and the law enforcement to assemble detailed portraits of people's lives. Many companies, such as Flock, offer entire suites of connected services. Police can further augment data from their own substantial arsenal of surveillance tools. This type of comprehensive tracking and data storage is unimaginable and raises serious hacking and privacy concerns. City Council members, understanding that the license plate reader surveillance technology is connected to the network of the global information grid, similar to the serious responsibility of a jury in a court of law. If all of you are not 100% sure beyond a shadow of a doubt that the privacy of the residents' personal information and data is protected and secure, please vote no to the implementation of these license plate reader surveillance cameras. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Gaboni, followed by David Christian.
Good evening, Gibney here. I'm here on the Flock cameras also. Listen, I don't dislike you people, all right? It's not what it's about. I'm here to shine light that there's two realities going on. One reality is what you guys have to do to us, and the other reality is what you present yourselves as trying to make it look like you're doing for us. And that has to do with the AI that's coming in. The first thing I'd like to read about or tell you about is the military-industrial complex, which Eisenhower warned us about when he left his presidency. He told us, be worried about this. What we're seeing is the security-industrial complex rising. The first thing I'll read to you real quick is Electronic Frontier Foundation found out that the Flock Safety has distributed a public information officer toolkit with an actual line to read to the city council to try to sell it to them. The blank police department has solved blank crime with the help of the Flock Safety. So basically, the police departments are salespeople for the Flock Safety system. So then we have the security industrial complex, told you about that. Chief Mills in Santa Cruz was being interviewed by Newsweek when he was the chief of police in Santa Cruz, and he said the chief of police Andrew Mills told the news outlet that AI systems have been helpful in identifying when officers should patrol already known crime hotspots. The point I'm making is that this is only the beginning of the surveillance AI system coming into the city. China is already done. They've got it all controlling all their citizens. That is what is coming here. The breaking of the human population is in progress right now, and you guys are aiding and abetting that breaking of the people. Breaking them, conditioning them that the cameras are coming, that it's not going to end, that this is for safety, when really it's just a stepping stone. The technology is already designed. They're giving you kindergarten level stuff right now that is only going to get worse.
Thank you. David Christian, followed by Zachary Daniel Stone.
Good evening. My name is David Christian. I'm a 53-year resident of the area. A few years ago, there was a movie called City of Industry that came out. It wasn't a bad movie, and it was interesting to a lot of people here because they filmed it all around Palm Springs. And it's particularly fun to watch it with somebody that lives here because They took the Wellwood Murray Library and converted it into a jewelry store. And so the bad guys come in, some bad guys from LA, and they have a smash and grab robbery, and they all go out the back door. And when they go out the back door, they end up behind Zen, which is 2 blocks away. So that's when all the locals say, hey, wait a minute, that's not the way it works around here. Well, while there are funny parts about the movie, what's not funny is it's based on not a smash and grab, sometimes violent jewelry store robbery in the area, and not one, but two, or not two, but a lot more than that. It's happened many, many times. And so I think that we've got a great police chief. I think we've got a great police department. And I think we need to support them with some security cameras. I'm speaking largely to, more things that are more oriented toward the stores. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Zachary Daniel Stone, followed by Sean Thomas.
All right. Let's see. 1D, adopt a resolution authorizing the extension of the service fee collected on behalf of the Riverside County Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Service Authority until May 2034. I promise you my car is not abandoned. I promise you. I know you guys want to collect the fee, but my car's not abandoned. Should I talk with the police chief about this? I just had one last week. I'm just saying. Saw it on the agenda. Thought I'd come up here and just say, hey, my car's not abandoned yet. You guys got any advice on that one later? All right.
Thank you. Sean Thomas, followed by Orwell George.
Hi. So this is my first meeting, so sorry if I get a little nervous. Fair to the citizen before, but Palm Springs is not Laguna Beach. I think if you're going to approve the cameras, you need to do it on better information. So I didn't read the 150-page contract. I only got through a couple pages. But comments in the agenda state there's been an increase in vehicle thefts. What are the actual numbers and how serious of a problem is it? It also mentions organized retail theft. What's the closest example of organized retail theft that would warrant cameras here? It comes across as fear-mongering. Why not put more cameras on the actual vehicles, which would encourage more police officers actually patrolling? So I live on Tockwitz. There's that old radio station. There's a cop parked back there almost every other night for like an hour or two. Every time I walk the dog, he's back there. The contract calls for a public relations team to help spread word of crime solved. So if that's the case, and all these other cities have the cameras, how come we're relying on anecdotal evidence as to their effectiveness? Wouldn't there be actual statistics that show how effective the cameras are? Also, they're police departments, so they should have statistics that prove what the actual impact of the cameras are. I'm also curious what the photo actually shows. It says it's not trained to look at faces, it's only to show license plates, but do we have an actual photo representation of what that looks like? What's the threshold of when officers will be contacted? If I have expired tags, are you gonna come out? Then it talks about how the cameras can be deployed in other neighborhoods. So what in the contract or city approval allows a neighborhood to say no to that? What would be the threshold required for a neighborhood to say, no, we're not interested in having those cameras? I think if you can answer all those questions, then you would be able to vote with better sounder judgment.
Thank you. Orwell George, followed by Rabbi David Lazar.
Hi there. Thanks for hearing us out. Back again with some spicy content from Orwell George. So the digital noose is tightening. It feels innocent right now. You guys are going to do what you're going to do. All that speaking here does is put a target on my back so that I maybe get pulled over more often. half of you guys are probably Freemasons or just useful idiots, but they are building a control mechanism, and they're baby steps. We're going to do a little quick lesson on a thing called Hegelian dialectic. I have to slouch, which kills the swag when you film this thing online, but I'd rather be heard than seen as a slouch. Hegelian dialectic is problem, reaction, solution. The powers that be, the illuminated ones, because they think they have this magical occult knowledge, they create a problem. That problem in this case is catalytic converters being stolen because people are falling out of the middle class into poverty. They're masters of human psychology, and they know the reaction of humanity. The reaction is fear. We need more cameras. We need more police. We need more Orwellian chuckle cuckery, to keep it PG. And the solution is then they offer something like these flock cameras, which is a baby step in the direction of a social credit source system where you will not be allowed to leave your district if you don't pay enough of their extortion fees. Some people call them taxes. I call it what it is. Thank you for hearing us out. Please vote for your children's children, because the digital noose that you are building may not affect you, but it will affect the future. Thank you. Have a good night.
We have Rabbi David Lazar, and then we will turn to our Zoom commenters.
Honorable Mayor and council members and Chief. As an Israeli citizen, of 36 years, father of 4 daughters and 6 grandchildren living in the state of Israel, with a network, tapestry of thousands, tens of thousands of loved ones, students, congregants over the years. I want to support you in your acknowledgement of the tragedy in Israel, Palestine that's going on right now. I also want to thank you for all the work that you do, including the cameras. I know, as probably many of you don't know, how a shooter from LA was caught with the help of those cameras in this last year. And while I hear the other side and I understand, I know that at least in the Jewish community, we will feel safer. Those kinds of security measurements in place. I want to thank you for your leadership, for your conscience, and taking time away from your really serious business of parks and sewage and everything that comes with city council to think about the bigger picture of humanity. But I also want us, all of us, to think of not just Israel, and the at least 1,300 Israelis who were slaughtered, some raped, some decapitated, soldiers standing on guard, 3,000 at least who are still in hospitals, but I want us to think of those who have died in the Gaza Strip as well. I want us to think of all those women and children and elderly who have already died and will continue to die in huge numbers because the Israeli army is doing what it feels it needs to do. This isn't about my position, my political position. This is about compassion. This is about recognizing when from time to time human beings show that they're no longer acting in the image of God. And if it happens that we, by extension, are responsible for innocent human beings dying, we need to feel that pain. We need to have compassion. I'd ask for everyone just to join me in a moment, recognizing the pain, the suffering, the death, and in a prayer for peace to whoever one prays to, for this to be over soon. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi, for coming here, and thank you for your compassionate speech. At this time, we'll turn to our Zoom comments. We have Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg. IT, do we have Rabbi Stephen Rosenberg on the line? Thank you. Rabbi, you have 2 minutes to give your public comment. Rabbi Rosenberg, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you have 2 minutes to give your public comment.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, and thank you for having me. I wanted to speak in the affirmative for the ALPR camera technology. As a synagogue that has been unfortunately hit with anti-Semitic acts several times in the last year or so, one that resulted in a possible shooting incident at our temple that was, thank goodness, thwarted by the police. This kind of technology can track people, and not only that, but can, they can identify license plates. They can identify someone who might be doing something terrible. I know there are some people that think this is an infringement of one's civil rights. I think for the council not to adopt this is morally irresponsible. You have a responsibility to protect the people. The police need this technology, and as the rabbi of the largest synagogue in the valley, I will tell you that it is important that our people feel safe. So I ask you that you would support these cameras, and it is important that people are protected. Also, as I understand it, that you can't read people's bumper stickers, etc. Please see what you can do about passing this. I think it's important. Every other city has them. Let's do the right thing. Let's do the moral, responsible thing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mohammed Tajzar.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mohammed Tajzar, and I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Southern California. So I'm speaking on agenda item 3, the license plate readers. So the ACLU opposes the staff recommendation to acquire Flock license plate readers, and we ask the city not to engage Flock for 3 reasons. First, ALPR technology is uniquely invasive and likely to harm poor people, immigrants, and people of color in and around Palm Springs. It collects highly precise location information, which research shows is easy to associate with individuals, and thereby giving the government unique power to monitor and track individuals' movements, even if they've done nothing wrong. Right? Second, neither the staff report, the department, nor Flock have offered empirical evidence that demonstrates that ALPRs reduce crime, and that's because there is none. Right? So while Flock can offer anecdotes, the ACLU believes in science and evidence, and none exists to show that ALPR deployments specifically lower crime. All we're left with is conjecture and speculation without any sourcing, right? Including unfounded claims that ALPRs are somehow deterrents, right? There's literally no evidence for that claim. So third, the collection and retention of data is deeply worrisome and leaves open the possibility that the deployment will actually violate state law. The draft policy that's in the staff report actually doesn't prohibit out-of-state and federal sharing, even though that's illegal. It actually contemplates that happening, which would be a violation of state law. Even Flock itself claims the authority to share Palm Springs data under Flock's sole discretion, right? That's a sharp contradiction to what Flock said in their Q&A, which is attached to the staff report. So in the absence of any of the scientific data beyond mere anecdotes, and given the sensitivity of this information, we ask that you reject spending this money on this proposal, which is likely to be far greater than $100,000, given all the PD time and resources required to maintain it. So I'll be present during the course of this discussion and can happily address any questions this council has at your convenience. Thank you for your consideration of the ACLU's position.
Thank you very much. At this time, our public comment period will end. Generally, at this time, we would move to the consent calendar, but in light of the comments made by Rabbi Lazar, I do want to just go ahead and move us to our emergency ordinance, emergency resolution first. so that you're here for that. And then we'll continue on with the rest of our meeting. So I'm going to hand it over to Mayor Pro Tem. If you want to, I'll let you take the lead on how you want to present this.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rabbi, also. So I recognize that our city doesn't always get involved in world events, but when an act of terrorism happens, I think it's something that also affects all of us as human beings. And regardless of what people think about Israel and Palestine or a one-state or two-state solution, there's no justification for a terrorist act against civilians, women and children, and for the taking of hostages. And I know that our Jewish community is worried. I know that as somebody who has lived in Israel, who's Jewish, who was in New York City during 9/11, that terrorism is something that does affect our residents. And I think this is important to have this resolution, that our residents know that we take a stand. I have drafted something. I want to also thank my other Jewish council member, Councilmember Holstage, for her advice and help on this. Something's been drafted very much along the lines of what our nation and 4 nations agreed to. So I can read the draft, and then council can weigh in. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Palm Springs, California, expressing its support for the State of Israel. Whereas we, the City Council of the City of Palm Springs, express our steadfast and united support to the State of Israel and our unequivocal condemnation of Hamas and its appalling acts of terrorism, and whereas we make clear that the terrorist acts of Hamas have no justification, no legitimacy, and must be universally condemned, there is never any justification for terrorism. In recent days, the world has watched in horror as Hamas terrorists massacred families in their homes, slaughtered over 200 young people enjoying a music festival, and kidnapped elderly women, children, and entire families who are now being held as hostages. Whereas we, the City Council, further emphasize that this is not a moment for any party hostile to Israel to exploit these acts to seek advantage. And whereas all of us recognize the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people and support equal measures of justice and freedom for Israelis and Palestinians alike, but make no mistake, Hamas does not represent those aspirations, and it offers nothing for the Palestinian people other than more terror and bloodshed. The City Council of the City of Palm Springs does hereby resolve as follows, pending approval, that we, the City Council of the City of Palm Springs, will remain united and coordinated together as allies and as common friends of Israel to condemn terrorism and support efforts to set the conditions for a peaceful and integrated Middle East region. I'll let other council members weigh in.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you, and thank you to Mayor Pro Tem for your leadership on this. We are actually one of the few Jewish elected officials in the Coachella Valley. So I really appreciate your leadership in the Jewish community. To Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein, thank you to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Rosenberg, and the rabbis and spiritual leaders of the Jewish community in Palm Springs. And I'd like to make a statement, if I can, for our community, in addition to this resolution. So with a heavy heart, we stand in solidarity with the people of Israel, and I express my profound grief over the ongoing violence and terrorism that have plagued the region. I also come to you today not just as a public servant, but as a Jewish mother, as a convert, Jew by choice, someone raising a Jewish son, and these events weigh heavily, not just on my mind, but so many parents and Jewish parents around the world. My son is actually a 4th generation Palm Springs resident. Our family has been involved in the Jewish community and the temple and Temple Isaiah here for over 50 years. My husband's grandmother was on the Sisterhood of Temple Isaiah in the 60s. I feel the pain in our community from last week's events and the trauma that this has unearthed for us, the collective trauma our community faces, recovering still from the Holocaust, and the growing tide of anti-Semitism and violent extremism, something us Jews, even in California and even in Palm Springs, are not safe from. Disturbing to hear Rabbi Rosenberg talk about the anti-Semitism directed to Temple Isaiah and Jews in Palm Springs. Like many in the Jewish community, my heart aches for innocent civilians who have been deeply affected by this conflict. Recent events have once again brought light to horrors of anti-Semitism, the heartbreaking toll it takes on the Jewish community worldwide. Every life lost is a tragedy. We must do all we can to prevent further suffering. The recent actions by the terrorist organization Hamas, including the taking of hostages, American hostages, war crimes, and more, are reprehensible and unacceptable. We cannot and will not stand idly by while innocent lives are lost and families are torn apart. As a mother, I think of all the parents reeling from losing their children and all the children who are reeling from losing their parents. In this trying time, we all share the deep desire for the safe return of hostages, for the healing and comfort to the victims and the families. We feel these events personally and deeply. The Jewish community has a long history in the role of building Palm Springs and in our community here in the Coachella Valley. We understand the profound importance of our collective efforts to bring about a swift resolution and peace. By standing in solidarity, advocating for a swift resolution, denouncing terrorism, strongly denouncing anti-Semitism, we can contribute to a brighter, more secure future for all those affected by this situation. Thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Jeffrey Bernstein for raising this issue and working with me. I appreciate that we have a lot of work to do as Jewish elected officials to display leadership for our community and bring our community together in healing. And thank you to our colleagues for joining us as allies in this action. Thank you to the community for your understanding and joining us in expressing our collective sorrow and resolve in the face of this conflict. It will take all of us to stamp out hate, violence, anti-Semitism, and to advocate for peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. I want to express my deep and sincere appreciation to Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein, to Councilmember Holstage, to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Rosenberg, and everyone in the Jewish community. The question always arises as to should we, as a city council, resolve our opinion on matters that are beyond our immediate control. And in this case, and in some others, we need to, when we know that our community here in Palm Springs is hurting. Before coming to council this evening, I stopped off, as I frequently do, at a medical office. I didn't have to ask that routine question, how are you doing? Because as I looked at the face of the Jewish mother that I was encountering in that office, I knew the hurt that was obvious on her face. And the question became, is everyone okay? And the answer was, I think so, but we don't know yet. Across our community, there are numerous people who are in agony because they do not know. They're finding out, and sometimes what they are finding out is that a family member, a deep and long friend, has been murdered in the most barbaric way possible. I thank our community for standing up and for expressing our devotion and our attention to all of the members of our community, and this resolution is perfectly worded.
Councilmember DeHart.
Thank you, and I echo the comments from my colleagues on the dais here, and want to especially reach out to Rabbi David, who spoke tonight, and all the rabbis in our community, King, Novak, Sally, everybody that is being touched right now with this act of terrorism, not only by folks around in Israel and throughout the United States, but right here in our own backyard. And we're going to get asked the question, why are we dealing with something that is not a local issue, that is a global issue? And this terrorism anywhere in the world is touching us right here on our own backyard, and it does impact us right here in the city of Palm Springs. And we have so many people that are touched by this heinous act from Hamas. I fully support the declaration and fully support and stand with the state of Israel and the condemnation of Hamas and its acts of terrorism. And while at the same time, this is an incredibly well-worded resolution, and I appreciate the work from Councilman Bernstein and Olstich. Our council didn't address Ukraine when the Ukraine issue had surfaced, and now thousands of people, women and children, elderly, have died in Ukraine. So I would like to express full sympathy and condolences also to the people of Ukraine for their loss and suffering also.
Thank you very much. So at this time, if we can have a motion and a second, we will make a vote on this resolution. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, so we have a motion and a second. If we can just do a roll call vote then. City Clerk.
Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein,
Yes.
Councilmember Holstich,
Yes.
Councilmember DeHart,
Yes.
Councilmember Middleton,
Aye.
Mayor Gardner.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for bringing this forward to us. The next item is the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar without item 1E, which was removed for separate discussion. We have a motion and a second. If we can just vote quickly. Just waiting on one more. Thank you. All right, the consent calendar is passed without 1E. At this time, we'll discuss 1E, the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2084, amending City Municipal Code to establish permanent limitations on third-party food delivery fees.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council, the item before you is a second reading of an ordinance providing for limitations on food delivery and commission fees that are charged by food delivery apps. As the council will recall, at the last council meeting, the city was entertaining a second reading at that time, but there were some revisions to the ordinance that the city council considered and provided direction on, and so that turned into a first reading, so that's why we're here now with a second reading. The ordinance before you incorporates the exception that was recommended and requested by DoorDash, and that has to do with the core delivery service definition. The ordinance in front of you contains the definition that was used in the Washington, D.C. ordinance, as I believe the council requested, and also includes corresponding changes to essentially provide that restaurants can opt to pay a higher commission fee for enhanced services such as marketing and business assistance. I will note that the ordinance in front of you contains two typographical changes that I'd recommend the council incorporate. That is, with regard to that definition of core delivery service, we have a defined term called retail food establishment. That should be used in place of the word restaurant that is, which is in front of you. And then also some language in one of the sections, 5.89.020, subsection A. I would recommend that we modify the language slightly to make it clear that the 15% cap is the total cap. It's not a 15% plus 5% cap that might be read that way. And so with that, staff would recommend that the council conduct the second reading of this ordinance with those two typographical changes. And I'm certainly available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for that staff report. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to clarify on the core delivery, it says discoverable. Does that mean it's actually available to everybody in the area? Is it anybody in the area who gets the services of these third party? Because what happened in Washington is they also limited the service area for people who were the core delivery.
It's my understanding in speaking with the DoorDash representatives that all restaurants that are, even the restaurants that are paying the basic fee, will be discoverable. I believe it's my understanding that the algorithms do affect which restaurants come up based on area. In other words, they're not going to highlight a restaurant that is 10 miles away when there's maybe more of them that are 1 mile away, but they are discoverable. In other words, if you do a search for Thai Smile, you will find that restaurant even though they're paying the basic fee.
So what happened in Washington is that they were discoverable, but it then turned out that their delivery service was their delivery area was very different than people who paid more. So the core delivery, they weren't paying more for marketing, they were actually, for the actual core delivery service, they were not really being offered the same thing. And so I want to make sure that our language clarifies that the core delivery goes to the full delivery area. So what happened in Washington is there would be like a 3-mile radius where the core delivery people would go, and a 10-mile radius where the other services would go.
I'm afraid I don't know enough about the apps myself to know whether that would happen under this definition. I think this definition uses the word discoverable, which means they can be discovered. They may not be highlighted, they may not be at the top of a list, but they're discoverable. So if the council wants further research into that, I can certainly do that. You might want to consider adopting this ordinance, and we can work with DoorDash to see if we need to bring back some revised language. But right now, there's no cap in place, and I think the council might want to be aware of that.
I understand. So thank you. And what I really just wanted to make sure is that the core delivery service, which is the basic delivery, is an equal basic delivery service, not the marketing. I realize the marketing is separate for all people in the area. So if somebody can discover it and then finds out they actually can't get delivery, then it's not really a delivery service.
If the issue is whether the delivery is available, then I believe it is, because this references both the discoverability of the restaurant as well as delivery service.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I want to make sure, because it wasn't the same. We had asked that and I think this may have been put in, that the requirement for a Palm Springs business license be clarified.
Yes, so the ordinance in front of you that's published online does include a language that specifies that a business license is required for these food delivery service businesses.
What do we normally do for businesses that operate without a license for an extended period of time?
I know that I've been involved in sending cease and desist letters. I think code staff and maybe finance staff might need to explain what happens after that. Normally we get compliance after I've sent that.
Okay, it's something we might want to look into. They've been operating for years without a license.
And I will say for the council's benefit and the benefit of the public, DoorDash has indicated that they plan to get a business license, so.
Okay, so, I understand where everybody is on this option, and I really just wanted to reiterate my concern. When these delivery services, they gouge restaurants and cheated drivers, and this happened all across the country. And And to think that they would be good players, I think might be unrealistic. You know, there's 3 companies which own 90% of the market, and they operate in tandem. DoorDash alone has a $30 billion cap value and a $6 billion revenue. And I understand that these offer a great service to the community, so I don't want to disrespect that, and a lot of people really rely on it. But we've also seen the effects of extreme consolidation. I know the state's Attorney General is weighing in on the merger of Kroger and Albertsons for the reasons that consolidation does. And DoorDash, if you look at their site, also really talks specifically about how restaurant margins are in the single digits. So, you know, that gouging is especially tough. And I respect Councilmember Middleton's comments last time that some things need to be determined by the state or federal government, but one of the things that Palm Springs is so special about is that we take the lead. And we've done that, certainly previous councils, time and again. And I'm very proud of the fact that our council has done that. And I also understand Councilmember Holsage's comments about not wanting to write a lawsuit, which I understand and share that sentiment. And it's disturbing that large companies with deep pockets can get their way by threatening to sue. But it is what it is. And I also respect Councilmember DeHart's in the previous meeting when he talked about all these undue government regulation and how, and actually about how these different organizations have supported DoorDash, but honestly, and other ones, but they buy their way in. So if you look at the Latino Restaurant Association, DoorDash is a partner. And I really was offended by all the letters I got from the DoorDashers that said, please protect my earnings, that price controls between restaurants and third parties hurt customers and delivery workers. I mean, it makes no economic sense, especially when the 3 companies are actually suing New York City to void a required minimum wage. And the truth is that this is really about small businesses, because the large chains, McDonald's, they pay less than 15% with all the bells and whistles. So it's really about going after our small businesses. But again, I understand where everyone's coming from. I'm a small business owner myself. I work for large corporations, and I'm just saying we need to be careful where regulations have been removed. It's been troublesome in other cities, and what makes Palm Springs so special is our small businesses. And we need to understand that our support for them should be unwavering. And I trust that we'll keep an eye on what these delivery services and what happens to the restaurants going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, we'll accept a motion and a second on this item. Thank you. Thank you very much. Motion passes 3-2. The next item is item 2A, a public hearing for a request to approve a hotel operations covenant between the City of Palm Springs and Twin Palms Resorts, LLC, pursuant to the city's Hotel Operations Incentive Program. We have Jay Virata here for a staff report.
The Hotel Operations Incentive Program was recently modified to extend the program until December of 2028, allow hotels with less than 36 months of TOT payment history with the city to also participate. And the Twin Palms Resort, was able to qualify for the modified program and has submitted an application to participate in the Phase 2 hotel renovation program. And tonight you are being asked to hold a public hearing to consider a hotel operations covenant with Twin Palms Resorts LLC, the owner of Twin Palms Resorts. The Twin Palms Resorts is located at 1930 South Camino Real, generally located south of East Palm Canyon Drive, east of South Palm Canyon Drive. And the property is 0.67 acres and has 16 rooms. Under the program, Twin Palms Resorts would benefit by receiving 50% of the net new TOT estimated to be, and TOT is transient occupancy tax, estimated to be $71,309,000 annually, or for the 10-year period, $713,087. The city is projected to receive net new transient occupancy tax of approximately $84,275 annually, or $842,753 over the 10-year program period. After 10 years, the city will receive the entire amount of approximately $160,000 net new transient occupancy tax revenues. And I want to point out that to prevent the owners of the hotel from receiving a windfall or undue profits beyond the purposes of the program, certain financial controls are included in the program, and these include having an adjusted TOT as the rate. So the regular hotel rate is 11.5% for a hotel of this size. The adjusted TOT rate is 10.9% of the revenue of the hotel, or 0.6% less. And this is referred to in the staff report as the unadjusted amount. The TOT is, the city is already receiving before the renovations, is set as a TOT base, and the city receives the entire amount of the TOT base. That amount is not shared. The total amount of TOT the hotel can receive is limited to the amount of the investment, or for 10 years, whichever occurs first, meaning they would receive their share of the TOT for 10 years if they do not, by that point in time, recoup the entire investment. And so just to show you some of the improvements that have been done at this particular hotel, we do have some images showing the flooring, furniture, wall treatments, and bed. The reception area, flooring, furniture, and paint. And it's also important to keep in mind the investment has created 2 new full-time jobs and 12 part-time jobs for a total of 8 full-time equivalencies. There's been upgrades to the amenities, as you can see in this image. It's very clean and modern. Furniture, paint, and windows have been upgraded. Exterior lounge has also been upgraded. And you see there's also been improvements to the kitchen with the acquisition of new kitchen equipment also. So that concludes the slides, and staff can answer questions you have, and we also have a public hearing.
Thank you very much, Jay. At this time, we'll take questions only for staff, and then we'll move to the public comment portion. Councilmember DeHart.
Hey, Jay, thanks for that. Do you have numbers on how many businesses have participated in the incentive program to date?
Over the history, I'd say about 21, and that's an estimate.
Yeah.
Since we've revised the program, we've had approximately 4, and that's since 2019.
So in the presentation, we're making some projections on future sales and the TOT that's going to get generated from that. Of the folks that have participated in the program before, have we gone back to look and see how accurate the projections were when we approved those folks participating?
We have not specifically. It's only been a few years, but the projections are generally conservative. We use, a hotel this size, 16 units, would probably be 90% occupied all the time. We account for the season, so we estimate about 75% occupancy for the year. So our numbers tend to run lower, and some of the hotels have generated quite a bit more than our projections, but the intent of the projection is to just kind of provide the estimate and not overshoot what might, we'd rather be lower than over on those estimates.
Yeah, okay, thank you, I got you. I asked because I want to celebrate success. And our program, we believe, is a big success. And so if there was a way to celebrate those successes and share the information with the public, I think that would be a big win for the city. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have other questions for staff? All right. At this time, we'll open our public comment. I do not have any public comments. City Clerk, do we have any?
No public comments,
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Then the public hearing is closed. Are there any other additional comments or questions from council at this time? Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, just for clarification, so Twin Palm, they have not been operating prior to this for a while?
They have been operating.
Okay.
And what we captured in terms of the transit occupancy tax they've generated is maybe 4 months. So it really does not impact the level of the base or the incremental TOT. So this is made possible because of the changes we made to the program recently in September that allows those without the TOT history to participate.
So they didn't have 3 years, but they've been operating 4 months. Are they finished with the renovations?
Yes.
Okay. No, I think this is great. This is exactly what it's for. So this is a win-win and a gain for the city. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have a motion and a second. One more comment from Councilmember DeHart.
No, I had a question before, now I have a comment.
Right. Yes.
So I just want to say thank you to the Twin Palms Resort owners. I think they've done a really great job on demonstrating their support and of this program, and they really have done a great job on bringing the property up to a standard that they will get those high occupancy rates. So good job to all of them. It's not in my district, but I still applaud all of their effort.
Councilmember Middleton.
I'll be very quick. It is in my district, and I'm very proud to have this hotel and these operators in my district and in our city, and pleased to move forward on this motion.
Thank you very much. At this time, we've got a motion and a second. Please go ahead and cast your vote. 5-0. Thank you very much, Jay, and looking forward to Twin Palms Resorts. The next item on our agenda is item 2B, a public hearing for an appeal of Cali Bliss LLC, conditional cannabis expiration cannabis permit. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I've got Deputy Zach Scalzo, who helps the Special Programs Department, available to provide the staff report, and I believe staff, Ms. Goodhart, is also available in person.
Thank you.
If IT can let in Zach, I'd appreciate it. Zach is an attorney at the city attorney's office, and he's going to be appearing by Zoom here shortly, hopefully.
Yeah, for the public, we have BB&K as our city attorneys, and so Jeff Ballinger appears in person and is our main point of contact, and when we, if needed, we pull in other members of his team.
IT, I'm getting a text that's from Zach saying that he's in and muted. So if you could unmute him.
Zach, are you able to hear us? IT, we can't see him and we're not hearing him if he is in the meeting. Oh, it looks like we're getting him. There we are.
Hello.
We can
Hi.
hear you, Zach.
Yeah,
You can hear
go
me?
go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you for your guys' patience. Hi, my name is Zachary Scalzo. I'm Deputy City Attorney and with BBK. And I'm here to present the staff report on the appeal of Calibus LLC for the extension of its conditional cannabis permit. And before I start, I just want to take a look at it from a 40,000-foot view and give it some context. A conditional cannabis permit is one that's granted to a permittee on a temporary basis, not to operate, but to take the preliminary steps that are necessary to obtain state approval and any other approvals that they need. For instance, I did this on the private side before, and it's helpful to have these conditional permits to be able to take it to a potential landlord to secure a lease. And within that context, this particular permit and the permits generally can be granted for a year, and they're subject to approval by the city council upon a showing that there was substantial progress toward becoming operational and no unreasonable delay. And it's on the burden on the permittee here at Calibus to present evidence to make that showing. So really there's two separate findings. One, whether there's substantial progress, which under Municipal Code Section 5.5580 requires a showing of measurable progress toward becoming operational. And two, the second finding regarding no unreasonable delay requires the city council to assess external factors that may have prohibited them from operating. And we prepared a pretty robust staff report, so I don't want to go through it line by line, and I intend to keep this pretty short. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them at the end. But I do want to give context just of how we got here. Calibus applied for a cannabis permit in February 2019. They applied for entitlements in December 2019. And in June 30th, 2020, they were ultimately granted a distance waiver by the city council arising from potential impacts regarding cannabis concentration. The permit initially was granted in July 14th, 2020. First extension was granted administratively by staff on June 4th, 2021. And the second extension was granted on June 9th, 2022. And the notice of appeal here was filed on May 30th, 2023. Now, staff's recommending rejecting the appeal and denying an extension of the conditional cannabis permit. And they gave two bases. We gave two bases in the staff report. One is it was unclear whether Calibus had the authority to pursue this appeal. And two, on the merits, they didn't make the required finding under the municipal code. Now, analytically, it made sense in the staff report to attack it that way, but I'm going to reverse it here. And discuss more the evidence and how we came to this conclusion. Calibus, in its notice of appeal, basically took the position that They had showed substantial progress because they had invested $1.5 million in becoming operational, and attached as evidence plan check review comments and designed concept renderings. They also cited COVID-19 as a basis perhaps to explain the delay, but it wasn't entirely clear. Going through this first, there's two batches of evidence. There are the statements made in the various communications, including the notice of appeal by Mr. Andrew McHale, and I'm sorry if I got the name wrong, and two, the actual documents that they initially provided with their notice of appeal and subsequent supplemental responses. Regarding the statements, staff determined to make a credibility finding adverse to Calibus, meaning that they didn't grant weight to the statements made, the bare statements made in the documents. One reason for that is that John McHale, who is on the application as an equal 50% member, called staff the day of the originally noticed appeal and stated that he did not agree with the appeal and that they had not invested $1.5 million. That's my understanding of what was said. And he followed up with an email, which is in the staff report, that basically said he didn't support the appeal. And also there's inconsistencies in some of the positions taken. For instance, in the June 9th, 22 request for an extension, and I quote, Calibus said tenant improvements were temporarily paused during the 2021-22 year due to inability to obtain, unquote, contractors, materials, supplies. And then they said, quote again, currently bidding and in negotiations with architects and general contractors. But if we fast forward and they're just in the initial planning stage and still in plan check comments, that there was no materials to obtain, there was no general contractors to bid at, you had no, you had no final plans and specifications that would support even building anything, let alone doing that. So we made a determination not to rely on the statements made in any of the documents. As it relates to the actual evidence, and I'm not going to go through it line by line, but in the notice, the conceptual design renderings and the plan check comments don't really show what was done. I mean, obviously something was done, but if you have to look at holistically between 2022 and this extension all the way back, we don't know the level of detail in the plans that were submitted. There was no, to my indication, any subsequent steps taken by them that shows any serious demonstration to continue with the plan check comments. And so we determined that's not really evidence of what specific steps were taken. Additionally, in the first supplemental response that was sent in response to an email from staff in August, again, the same statements were repeated with no evidence, and staff specifically asked as supplemental information for, any documents that would substantiate the costs of $1.5 million, as well as any other documents that could show what were the impact from COVID-19. And at that time, none were really received. September 25th, after staff granted a temporary, a recalendar this hearing upon request by Calibus, we did receive some documents, but again, they didn't speak to the efforts. They were largely retainer agreements and incomes and invoices without any detail as to what specific steps were taken. And so as it relates to two documents, the escrow statement and the tax, the alleged property tax bill. One, it wasn't clear that Calibus purchased anything. One, there was no deed of transfer, there was no evidence of title, and also the LLC that was named on the escrow statement was an LLC separate from Calibus, and a person who paid the alleged property taxes, or the person identified in that document, wasn't any of the parties that was identified in the application as operating with Calibus. So there's no evidence that there was any actual purchase of a property to begin with, and it's my understanding, after talking with staff, that staff said the understanding that they're actually renting it. And so, and going down to the COVID-19 issues, I'm a public works attorney. I dealt with numerous issues regarding delays and stuff from construction, but no constructions started, right? The supply chain issues, construction impediments that are generally present in a construction project that really did arise and cause substantial delay and cost impacts to public entities trying to construct buildings, they just don't happen unless there's construction, and we're still in plan check here. And again, there was no other evidence of anything specifically from COVID that prevented construction or other progress. So on that basis, we found that the lack of evidence, even the evidence that was presented, didn't support a finding of substantial progress, nor that any delay was reasonable. And I'll just quickly go through the alternate basis for denying the appeal, the lack of authority. The application identified Mr. Andrew McHale and John McHale, and they're spelled differently, and I think they're pronounced the same, as equal 50% members. It became unclear who could authorize the appeal or what happens in the anomalous situation of when you have two people with an equivalent interest sitting there and one saying go forward with the appeal and one objecting as to whether or not it could be calendared and in effect they had standing. We were provided with a operating agreement and other documents, but it's not the city's job to, in effect, call balls and strikes with who can do what under an operating agreement. And we asked that Mr. John McHale withdraw his previous email and give an indication that he supported it. So there was no indication that the appeal was supported by both members. And so that provides an additional basis to deny the appeal and to deny the extension. And with that, I've concluded my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions when it's time.
Thank you very much. At this time, are there any questions for staff on this item? Mayor Pro Tem.
So the, just to clarify, the bill of sale is for, that's just in there, that's not their property? Have we asked the sellers who owns it?
We were only provided with, this is Zach, we were only provided with the documents, and so I had no explanation coherently of what it was supposed to represent. We haven't had any follow-up because it's our view that as an administrative matter, it's the permittee and the appellant here's job to make the record to substantiate its claims. And if they're suggesting that purchasing a property was substantial progress, then it was the appellant's job to put that evidence before the city council. I will say, if you look at, it was the September 12th letter, and the attachment number is beyond me. Actually, I can pull up my notes right here. I apologize. It's the September 12th letter, and I believe it's attachment J, or I think it's attachment J. When the city staff approved the extension and recalendared the hearing for the second time, there's also evidence that the property was put on the market. So I'm not sure we could follow up with them, but they didn't list Calibus as the owner. And that also belies any suggestion that substantial progress or intent to have progress could be made if the property was being put up for sale.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing. The public is invited to speak on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes. This first speaker is Scott Tashner. That's correct. You have 2 minutes, and if the council has any other additional questions, we'll let you know.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I'm Scott Tashner from City Permit Help, development entitlement consulting firm. And I've been retained by Andrew, the applicant, to represent Calibus in this extension. I have a few comments I would like to make in support of my client's request for extension. Firstly, a few weeks ago, I talked with Troy, he's John's attorney, and he assured me that he did not want to sabotage this. You know, he's in full support of extending this appeal. The problem is, once the attorney got involved, he's protecting his client, and he doesn't want him to make any assertions that he's not completely confident in. So he's advised him not to do anything in writing. So I understand the city's concern in that matter. That said, and being a former city planner myself, I understand the concerns, and I believe this is an internal matter. I understand the city's concerns. It should be the place of the city not to get in between the business partners, other than to confirm that they're both in support of the current request
for a one-year extension of the CUP. As far as demonstrating progress towards occupancy, I was retained a few months ago just for this reason, to assist with the re-entitlement of the conditional use permit, to coordinate obtaining all necessary building permits, to work with contractors on the site, and to ensure that we meet all the conditions of approval of the original CUP, to be on site for major inspections, to assist with all required cannabis-related licenses, local and state. Unfortunately, excuse me, my client's kind of in a catch-22 right now. We're currently in plan check. They did submit in April with the building department. We received first submittal corrections and comments, but until we can ensure that we're going to receive entitlements for the extension, my client is apprehensive to further make investments. I mean, going back years to purchasing the property. And I understand that maybe one of the disagreements is the claim of how much it costs, but you know, there's substantial investment here in this business and purchasing the property, whether it's 1.2 or 1.5 or $300,000, it's still a substantial investment. In conclusion, my business, and he's brought me on, does dozens of projects all over the valley, and getting projects across the finish line is what I do. And as long as they keep me on retainer, I ensure I will do everything to work to get this, do the same for this project and get them all the way through occupancy. As you know, my client has taken many steps to this point, and I would hate to see this project killed before it ever gets a chance to be a successful business in the community. We do not need another failed business and another vacant building. I believe they're ready to move forward with this. To the contrary, I always like seeing, I find great reward myself, planning entitlement professional, seeing successful projects that are well thought out, well designed, and benefit the communities in which they are located. So,
Thank you very much.
and Andrew is here, and I'm available too if you have any questions. So,
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Andrew, do you also want to give public comment on this item?
If I could, if that's okay?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
fine. You have 2 minutes.
My name's Andrew McKay. I'm the CEO and managing member of Cali Bliss LLC. And I'm here to ask for the city's continued support in granting the extension for the CUP. I understand the confusion in terms of the building and it being not under the Cali Bliss LLC name, and that's done intentionally in order to separate the property and the license. The previous owner and the property you asked was Mr. Mike Rifkin, and he and I have spoken many times and met on many occasions, and we're on a text message basis. And so if you're wondering who the previous owner is, it's Mike. I've dedicated a great deal of my time and financial resources, we all have, towards this project and the completion of it. Unfortunately, it did occur during an unprecedented time in our country and during a global pandemic, so that didn't assist us in aiding in finishing this project. I've employed, and we've employed as a company, numerous local businesses such as High Road Consulting, Global Go, and Mr. Tanner here and his local business here, as well as numerous engineers, architects, design, marketing, branding, and financial consultants. So we've dedicated a large amount of our time and resources, and we'd just like to have the city continue to support us in getting this to the finish line, because that is the goal and that's what will be accomplished. Yeah, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. So at this time, we will close the public hearing. Is there any additional questions or discussion from council on this item? Mayor Pro Tem.
Can I ask the applicant, so you own the building now?
It's my stepfather is one of the owners, and myself and John, and then the members of Cali Bliss, who's the applicant for the cannabis license, it's myself and John.
Okay, so this was a Cal Bliss investment?
The purchase of the building, yes, was for, in order for Cali Bliss to pursue a cannabis license, we needed to have a location. And unfortunately, we tried to lease and tried to find a place to lease, but it was very difficult to meet all the distance waiver and the compliance, and so we took a chance and a risk, and we actually purchased the property prior to applying for the application for a cannabis license in the hopes that council would grant us the distance waiver, and luckily we were granted that distance waiver. And so that's the situation we're in now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments on this item? Staff recommends denial of this project. So I don't know if anyone has a recommendation, if anyone wants to accept that recommendation, or if they want to offer an alternate motion. But tonight, right now is the time for that.
I'm ready to make a motion to sustain the decision of staff.
Okay. We have a motion by Councilmember Middleton and a second by Councilmember DeHart to accept the denial as represented by staff. Can we have a vote, please? Okay, the denial is sustained. Thank you very much. At this time, we will move to item 3A to approve a 2-year cooperative subscription agreement with Insight Public Safety, Inc. for the implementation and deployment of 15 Flock safety fixed ALPR cameras. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm Andy Mills, your police chief, and just want to start off with a few words before Lieutenant Hutchison takes over the presentation. We find it very important for us to be very careful in the types of technology we ask for from council, because it's a delicate balance to ensure that public safety aligns with civil rights in the Constitution rather than opposes it. And we believe that we have struck that balance here in Palm Springs and work hard to make sure that we are withholding and upholding the constitutional rights of all people, the constitutional right to be free from victimization, but also the constitutional right to privacy. And so we believe that this technology can enable us to strike a very careful balance to help facilitate and to ensure a public safety at a greater level, and also at the same time be minimally invasive into the privacy of individuals. I know there are lots of theories out there about artificial intelligence, and I listened with amusement when one gentleman quoted me from Newsweek magazine, where I stood against, I believe that was the article, against predictive policing because I felt it could harm people of color. So as we move forward, the presentation Lieutenant Hutchison will present will talk about why we believe this is important and how the technology can be used, and hopefully dispel some of the rumors about what artificial intelligence can do in this type of device. So Lieutenant Hutchison will present, and we'd be happy, of course, to answer any questions you might have. Final comments on this from me for right now is that one thing I truly do appreciate are the tough questions and a robust debate. That's what we are about in this community. So thank you very much for pushing us to make sure that we are getting this right. And so Lieutenant Hutchison, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chief. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, and city staff. The City Council had asked us to address several concerns last time, as well as ask members of Flock to be here. So we've done both of those in the staff report and the presentation. Many of the questions were revolving around data retention, privacy, how Flock was going to protect that, how Flock was going to guarantee those protections, what the police department's policy would look like in relation to those. And we've provided those, and hopefully we've provided a comprehensive response in the staff report that's before you. We are going to go over this, the PowerPoint again. I want to reiterate how this technology works and some success stories, and hopefully, again, as Chief Mills said, answer some questions that may still be lingering. So again, this is a real-world example of a flock picture of what a flock camera captures. This is the back of a vehicle. For this purpose, we blurred out the license plate. But this is a fixed license plate reader system, and again, it's going to capture the date, time, and location, the actual license plate, whether what state it's from, whether that's a partial plate or a paper plate, and maybe if no plate at all, and vehicle characteristics such as the make, model, type, and color. If there were a bumper sticker on there, it would capture a bumper sticker. It would not capture what the bumper sticker says. It would just indicate that there is a bumper sticker on that vehicle. So what this is and what this is not. What these LPRs are license plate recognition systems. They gather objective evidence and facts about vehicles, not people. They alert the police on wanted vehicles only. They are used to solve mini crimes. And the systems adhere, both the system that Flock has built and our policy adhere to all state laws. But it is not a facial recognition system. It is not tied to personal identifying information. It is not used for traffic enforcement. We will not be sending anybody tickets in the mail for expired registration or red light camera violations. This data is not stored beyond 30 days, and it automatically deletes every 30 days. That can be adjusted plus or minus if we needed it. Red light camera. A red light camera system, however, is designed to capture driver images and driver identification, as you can see in the presentation here. And a fixed LPR system is designed to capture the rear license plate for vehicle identification purposes. Legal considerations through all of this, we've addressed these in our policy, again, I understand the ACLU had made mention that there were some concerns. We had the policy as it relates to the current state law reviewed by our city legal staff, and they can provide a response as to what they believe our policy, if it's currently follows SB 34 and some civil codes mentioned with the state of California. But we've addressed that in detail. The ALPR policy also only allows for trained users to access the system. It's for official use. There has to be reasonable suspicion of a crime. There is no out-of-state sharing. Another part of the policy that we've also discussed recently, we are looking at that with legal as well, and I believe that's the section that talks about the chief of police ability to review and then share with out-of-state agencies. That's not very clear. In talking with Chief Mills, we're going to move that language to only include it's got to be based off of a warrant or subpoena. There are routine system audits. This captures all of the data, who accessed the data, what date they accessed it, what plates they accessed, what was the purpose of that investigation. And it also prohibits invasion of privacy, harassment or intimidation, or any type of personal use. Those are the policies that are currently in place, and there can be criminal penalties for that misuse as well. State law requires training, requires limitations, control, and access, and requires limitations on the sharing. Internal and external access information here. This is limited to a need-to-know, right-to-know basis. So some of the questions, how many staff members? There's a great number of staff members within the police department that have investigative purposes and responsibilities, and that's police officers, dispatchers, community service officers, detectives. Those type of people will be accessing the system once they are trained and understand their responsibilities with this information. Again, criminal penalties can be assessed for unauthorized access to this system. We provide training to all the employees. All the queries are logged and auditable every single month. They can be available weekly if need be, monthly, annually. And then the agency controls with whom the data is shared. That's really important. The way that the system works is that an agency will submit a digital request through the Flock system saying that they would like the Palm Springs Police Department to share our cameras with them, and we will accept that or reject that. And we will create our own internal MOUs to share with agencies that we choose to share our camera systems with. There is no sharing, no data sharing of this by the vendor, and no outside state sharing, again, by court order and or subpoena. The data integrity is maintained in CJIS compliant transmissions and storage by a vendor, Amazon Web Services, using AES 256-bit encryption, and it's a standard encryption system used by both the federal government and the National Security Agency. Our IT has also reviewed this and has a good understanding of the data encryption, and it can also speak to their comfort level with the way that Flock maintains this data. And again, it's automatically purged after 30 days. We removed a 365-day retention and significantly reduced that retention period down to 30-day window. The footage is owned by the agency and not Flock. Flock does not have access on their end to review the footage that the police department collects. It's a 30-day retention, then it's deleted. It takes human bias out of the crime solving by detecting objective data and detecting events that are objectively illegal, like stolen vehicles. All the data is stored securely again in the AWS cloud. The search reasons are required. At our agency, we require at a bare minimum a case number so we can track that back to the investigation. No facial recognition in the software. This is not a video surveillance system. It doesn't face the driver window, and it doesn't collect that system. If Flock is here, so if there was a camera placed somewhere that did inadvertently capture a driver's face, they can explain what happens with those systems. This is not a predictive policing platform, and there is no personal identifying information. So what this is telling us is it is capturing your license plate and the make, model, and color of your vehicle only. The system is not pushing out who owns that vehicle. The system is not identifying, again, things like, political statements that might be on bumper stickers, et cetera. So the personal identifying information is not being retained in this system. It is not used for traffic enforcement. I want to reiterate that again. Nobody's going to get traffic citations, registration violations, any of that. The system's not designed to do that, and it's not capturing the information to even be able to send that back to the registered owner. And then the transparency portal is a portal that Flock provides, and we intend to use this transparency portal to talk about it will clearly show and indicate all of the agencies that the police department has chosen to share the data with, how often audits are being conducted, and several other key pieces of information. Some of the uses and benefits here that we're going to go into now, we're going to talk about proactive real-time alerts. This is really, really critical, right? When a wanted vehicle enters and is it's captured on one of our cameras, that is going to send our agency an instantaneous alert and the location and description and license plate of that wanted vehicle. We then take that information and enter that information into a different database to confirm that that vehicle is still wanted and that we are still looking for that very vehicle for the mentioned crime. This is a reactive investigative tool, so it's a searchable database. If we're not going to have somebody monitoring this all the time, we can go into the system and search for vehicles and license plates that may have hit some of these cameras throughout the Coachella Valley. Local implementations and collaboration. So ALPIR technology is an existing tool for local law enforcement, including our neighboring communities. All but, I think we've heard it already, Coachella does not have these, but most of the Coachella Valley cities do. There's numerous success stories and examples where this could have been used in Palm Springs. We're going to talk about those here shortly. And a majority of agencies in the Coachella Valley, again, still use those. And there are many private businesses, HOAs, and other individuals that can elect to pay for these systems themselves and share that data with law enforcement if they so choose. Here's one of the case studies that we have here. There were 4 people shot at the Raising Cane's about a year ago on Halloween, And during that investigation, we were able to, 4 people shot and 1 person murdered. During that investigation, we were able to enter this license plate of the vehicle because there was great surveillance video from Raising Cane's themselves. We were able to put that in flock, and it started hitting in the, I believe in the Indio La Quinta area. Our officers were able to get a hold of Riverside County Sheriff's Department and dispatch units to that area immediately, and we had 2 suspects in custody within 24 hours of this murder and this violent crime. Another horrific crime here in the city of Palm Springs. This man here in the middle murdered 2 individuals, Jenny Dillon and Joseph Rachi. These were 2 different murders at 2 different times, 2 different locations, and they were not connected. The only connection was the suspect. This took several months for the police department. We were coming up on dead ends. We were not coming up with good leads. We eventually found a vehicle description, not a license plate, but a vehicle description. At that time, we provided that vehicle description to the Cathedral City Police Department, who then searched the flock database and gave us a potential suspect vehicle. In the end, that vehicle led us to the suspect seen here, and it was arrested and held accountable for the murders of Jenny Dillon and Joseph Rachi. The last one, which the chief and rabbis have talked about, was the LA synagogue shootings, and the suspect was located in Cathedral City. We had a flock hit on that indicating a direction of travel, and officers were able to get dispatched and deployed to locate that suspect who had just finished loading and firing some high-powered rifles at the south end of the city. But thankfully, we were able to take him into custody for LAPD for that crime. This is a little bit about the transparency portal again. You'll see it'll talk about our policies. We're going to publish those. It's going to give us usage metrics that we're going to provide to the public. And we can also share downloadable search audits. Flock is here again. They can give you a little bit more details if you'd like about this transparency portal, but this is a really critical key piece to transparency and what the police department is doing with the cameras and with the data that will be provided on our website to the public. So why flock? This is a big question. So the privacy is the biggest one that we see absolutely that comes to the forefront when we're looking at this. And the police department, as Chief Mills said, places an absolute high priority on safeguarding the privacy of the public and personal identifying information and for our community. And Flock has stringent data protection protocols in place to ensure that surveillance footage remains secure and accessible only to authorized law enforcement personnel. And we are committed to respecting the privacy of the residents and maintaining the confidentiality of the personal information. And we are also committed to keeping the data within the state of California as the policy prohibits sharing outside of the state, as does law. Affordability and scalability. We looked at this when we were considering Flock. And affordability is paramount for the police department and the community, and Flock provides a very affordable solution that can help us deploy these cameras throughout the city. Regional sharing is critical. There's a lot of questions that come up that may say, why can we just keep it in Palm Springs? Well, if we did, we would be limited to where are the suspects. So again, if we weren't sharing this data or receiving this data from other agencies, we wouldn't have known that the murder suspects for the Marines were in La Quinta and Indio area. So that's really critical that we're able to share this collectively among agencies. And then again, accurate data retrieval. And Flock systems equipped with the state-of-the-art technology that enables accurate data retrieval, whether whether it requires the reviewing of the footage for security incidents or criminal investigations. The system provides for law enforcement reliable, precise data retrieval capabilities, and that's really critical. Next steps is to answer any questions you may have for us, for Flock, or for Chief Mills.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Councilmember Holstage, you have some questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Lieutenant Hutch for all your work on this. So appreciate you. And thank you to the chief, and thank you to staff for having an open, and my colleagues for pushing this to another meeting so we could have a public presentation and a public agenda item. We obviously have members of the public who are interested in this, and we want to be fully transparent and have a clear public process and answer the questions that the public has. So really appreciate the extra work that city staff did to bring this forward. Mayor Pro Tem and I met with Flock. We spent, I think, an hour or so with Flock and PSPD talking about the Flock camera system, talking about data, privacy, consumer protections, the contract, AI, what Flock does with AI, what you can use data for, I asked questions, and Mayor Pro Tem did, about how you clean the data to get rid of identifying information about Palm Springs or Palm Springs residents. So he's had an hour-long conversation with Flock, just for the public to know. And then we also met with the ACLU and spent about an hour or so as well, hearing from the ACLU and talking to them about their concerns about mass surveillance and Flock and civil liberties and privacy. And so just for the council and the public to know, we did that work to get our questions answered and feel like we did our due diligence in this policy and making sure we have the best possible policy. So thank you to PSPD for doing that with us, and Flock and the ACLU for meeting with us. Overall, I really appreciate the changes that we've made. So I'm sorry, I'm not staff to summarize what exactly we requested, but we had met with Flock, and your terms and conditions had included that you can use AI and Palm Springs data for your AI for a broader term than we might want. And so you worked with the city attorney to clarify that language so that you can only use our data for AI for vehicle identification, and we can protect that you're not using our data for other AI purposes unless we agree to change that. Do you want to summarize any other changes that we've made, or am I doing an okay job?
Yes, ma'am. I think you're doing a great job. Again, one of the big issues that the ACLU did bring up as well, and I mentioned this earlier, was the ability of the chief of police to simply say he could review it and then share with out-of-state agencies. We had some discussion whether that fit within the law, and that was heavily pointed out by the ACLU, and Chief Mills has agreed to say that that language needs to change to where it has to be court order or subpoena in order to be able to access that, so it wouldn't simply be on a chief of police word for the organization. So that was another key component as well.
We did also modify the agreement, and Flock agreed to modifications that include incorporating by reference the city's policy. So in addition to Flock being required to comply with federal, state, and local laws, they also have to comply with the police department's policy, as it might be amended from time to time. Flock also agreed to, as you mentioned, narrowing the use of even anonymized data for things like training their computers AI to identify new models of cars that might come out. And finally, they agreed to language that provides that if for some reason a court, for instance, in another jurisdiction tries to seek data from Flock or from the city based on these cameras, that Flock will notify the city, so the city has the opportunity to go and defend the city's interest in protecting data of folks who are driving throughout the city. So Flock has been amenable to those changes that we proposed.
Thank you for that. And so, and just kind of so I appreciate those changes have already been made. We want to be clear about that for the public. And then I think the main questions that we've heard and we've gone over with PD as well, is primarily this SB 34 state law not allowing sharing of data outside the state, right? And so I even saw on your screen there, it had a little asterisk. And so can you just clarify, and we worked with the city attorney to make sure that we want to follow state law and make sure this data isn't going outside of the state. So can you just clarify the work that you've done on that.
Sure. So SB 34 specifically, it provides more than just out-of-state sharing. It talks about data retention, privacy, security measures, but more specifically, it's very specific and prohibitive on out-of-state sharing. In the state of California is the only place that this data will be shared among California agencies. If a Florida agency or an Arizona agency sends us a request, by law we have to reject that request and cannot share our camera systems with those out-of-state agencies.
So we're not concerned, we're not going to be sharing with Arizona, and they're not going to be enforcing Arizona law using our ALPR technology or database.
That's correct. And again, the transparency portal will provide the public with information, up-to-date information of what agencies we are sharing with, so that'd be very transparent.
And that's great. And then one thing we also worked on, so we discovered that each agency has an agreement with Flock, but we don't actually, for this, it wasn't originally proposed to have interdepartmental MOUs for the ALPR data. And so one thing that we've proposed is now having an MOU with, say, Cathedral City or Riverside Sheriff or all the agencies we're going to do, just to make sure that they're following best practices, they're following our policy, which I think is good. They're not using our data for other purposes, right?
Yes, that's correct. And we've already drafted that MOU, and we've sent that to legal, Chief Mills as well. And so we will get some finalizations on that. And the way that will work is if we receive a request from an agency, we'll reach out to their LPR administrator. We'll email them the MOU, get the signatures back. At that point, then we'll make a decision to share the cameras to that agency within the state.
And I think that's a really smart policy solution so that we do have some control over what third parties are doing with Palm Springs data.
Yeah, Councilmember Holstage, if I can just comment on that, we also, in that MOU, state that they are prohibited from sharing any of our data with anybody else, including other law enforcement agencies. We want the right to be able to refuse or to accept who can see our data. So if Cathedral City, for instance, wants to use our data for their investigations, that's fine, but they can't forward it on to CHP or anybody else.
Yep, thank you for that. I think that's a really good solution. Otherwise, our data, we wouldn't know what was happening at the third party level. And so that's really important. And we do that with other data that we use for law enforcement purposes. We did have a conversation with the ACLU about authorized users, and we had that conversation with PD. There's a broad array of authorized users in the policy, but it sounds like that really mimics the authorized users for CLETS or DOJ or other databases. So we thought that makes sense to mimic the other data. And then we add language about stating that we're not using for specific types of enforcement. There was also language in there that we're not doing this for immigration enforcement. We're not going to pursue certain types of crimes or other complaints.
Yes, that's been discussed, and we will, before these are deployed, that we need to sit down with legal and get exactly, what crimes those are, and make sure everybody's satisfied with that. So again, when we start the deployment of this, if this were to be approved, we're probably looking at a minimum 90 days, so we have time to get that language adjusted.
Thank you. I think that would be really important to include, so we know we're not participating. We have a longstanding policy of not participating in, in immigration enforcement, for example. So that'd be great. I know the policy says that, and then to specify if there are other things as well we might not want to participate in or help other agencies do.
Minimally on that, council member, are three things. One is immigration enforcement. We don't do this against state law, and we will not get involved in that in any way. The second is anything to do with women's rights, reproductive rights. We will not use that data. We cannot use that data to do any type of enforcement or give it to other people who would. And then the third thing is gender affirming care.
Thank you.
That will not be part of this, and we'll specifically lay out at least all three of those.
Thank you. And then the termination we also discussed. So it looked to me like the contract, normally we allow all contracts with the city to terminate within 30 days for either election by either party. Usually we can get out of contracts pretty quickly as a city attorney. I didn't see a termination clause in here that's normal like that. It looks like it is a term contract for 2 years. Is that right? So could you speak? Imagine there's Flock says they use that FBI level data encryption, but say that there is a leak or something. We want to no longer use Flock. How would we terminate this contract?
There is, and quite honestly, we frequently see these types of term provisions in software service agreements that we use Microsoft or Google or whatnot. As a practical matter, if we find that Flock is not abiding by either California law or our policies, we can stop using them even if we have the agreement in place. We just won't use them. We'll turn off the cameras.
Do you feel comfortable that we have enough control, even though it is a term contract that we have 2 years for
Absolutely.
and can't terminate, because we control the cameras? And so if our residents come to us and say XYZ happened to me and we no longer want this in our city, then we could take action to turn off the cameras and no longer use the services.
Absolutely.
And then one other thing we discussed is reporting violations to the city manager or the city attorney. So I saw in your policy you included a lot of, I think, protective policies like quarterly review and audits, and all the data is tracked. So whoever searches for Christy Holstage's license plate, that there's a record of that. So it seems like there is a lot of protection that the administrator can access and control. Can you just talk about the reporting? Like if we should add a policy to report violations in addition to the police chief to the city manager or city council, or do you have a suggestion about that?
I can answer that, Chief, unless you'd like to. Okay. So yes, for part of the report, again, we have the ability to conduct these audits, and we are able to say, what are they doing for? Did we find any indiscretion? Did we find any misuse? And then what did we do about that? It's very similar to a lot of the reporting we currently do with the state, and there are certain criteria that require the police department to report and publicly provide certain violations by police officers. So could we establish a report at the request of the City Council on an annual basis, on a monthly basis? I believe that's absolutely possible and very easy to do, which would simply indicate here is the audit. If we found misuse, what was that misuse, to what level, and then what action did we take to remedy this situation? So, we would still follow some of those guidelines in terms of protecting, who it was in violation of it, unless the chief feels comfortable releasing that information. But being able to release that information should be very easy.
I'd like to see, if I can, probably not to the city council, but to the city manager in addition to the police chief, just so there's that checks and balances of our government.
Of course. I think that if we put it on the same schedule as we do with DOJ audits, that would make sense to me, so we're not creating a different system, and then have no problem being held accountable by the city manager for our activity. And should there be abuse, it would probably fall under SB2, which is state mandated reporting, and that is also available to the public.
Thank you. I don't want to add an administrative burden for reporting. It's just that you already do this with a lot of data, and it makes sense to treat this as comparable data, even though it is a different tool. And the ACLU argue that there are a lot more data points in some of this data that might be accessible than others. So it's a powerful tool, but you also have other powerful tools that your department uses every day.
And, council member, if I could just chime in, it does make sense to me for the chief and I to periodically get together when these audits are done, talk about it, and then if we saw anything troubling, I think that would be the time to bring it to the council's attention and have a discussion with you about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to see this as a pilot program and then bring it back to council and the public in 2 years, and we can, see how this is going and see, the data collection around it. I'm sure you then will have data about how this has been used in our community, and any other concerns or changes we might need to make to the contract. I think that's the only other thing that I want to raise is that for the ACLU had raised that our policy says there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. It does say that in part of it, and I think that relates to license plate data. They argue, and I think I agree as someone who's studied constitutional law, that you do have a reasonable expectation of privacy of how you move around the city and other things like that. Obviously, the Supreme Court has not kept up with how data and tracking and all the data we're putting out into the world now. But I just wanted to make sure that that's heard. And then I think, Mayor Pro Tem, if that's all of the issues, the only other thing that was raised for council to know is it sounds like we have no regulatory framework for these cameras to be added to the city by private individuals. And so HOAs have already added them. You heard one neighborhood in my district has, and it sounds like it's sort of a lack of regulation, which we've seen from other companies when we had scooters drop in or we had Airbnb before there was regulation. And so council may want to consider adding a policy just for a regulatory framework, potentially giving, controlling what, if there's consumer protections, we negotiated our contract with Flock, thank you, to be more protective. They could benefit from that. There could be data benefits. There could be sharing, right? We could think of what we would want from those HOA agreements instead of just lots of cameras everywhere and not being synced and not, coming for the benefit of the city and our residents. So I would like to have us have that conversation if it's worth prioritizing and we have capacity for. But that is, I think, the main takeaway is we might want to get in front of this before almost every HOA could have these, and we would have no limit on that or involvement. And hopefully that's I'm sorry to take so much time to council. I know 2 of my council members are ready to move on last time. I just want to make sure we do our due diligence with this because there is so much public concern.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Councilmember Holstage, because she did go through this 150-page report in great detail, and she's a lawyer, so understood it a lot better. And we did also meet with the city attorney and Lieutenant Hutchinson on this and really raised some good questions. And I very much appreciate Lieutenant and the Chief working on this. I know there was a lot of questions, and I raised them last time, and my main one was making sure our policy was incorporated into the agreement. And thanks to Councilmember Holstage, a lot of other issues came up that I think have made this a much more robust and safe for our citizens. I did want to just talk a little bit about the HOAs. So the way it works with the HOAs, they have access to the data, or the police have access? I think.
Yeah, so there's 2 options, or maybe more, and if I'll start, then maybe Flock will want to jump in to give a little bit more information. An HOA or a community group can elect to purchase their own cameras. At that point, they can decide to keep the data with a user within the group there who they trust, and anytime a crime may occur where there may be information on a suspect vehicle, they can then turn that information over to us. Another model is that they take a hands-off approach. They purchase them, they enter into an agreement with us, and they give us the real-time data for that neighborhood. Let me let Flock just address that in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, that's generally right. The things that I would like to add to that, and Hector Soliman with Flock, is that it's a one-way sharing. So your police department's data is never available to an HOA. HOAs are able to purchase cameras, put them on private property, and sometimes they will elect to use the search feature. Other times it will be kind of like a public-private partnership where the data just goes directly to the police department for their use and for their ability to get hot list alerts.
So currently, like an HOA could have these cameras in and then just do their own little searches and say, "Oh, Christy went to go see so and so last night," and
they would have to, their portal, which is much more limited, would still require that they enter in a reason. They wouldn't be seeing any information on the vehicle other than the vehicle itself. The intent, or that usually HOAs, the reason that they're purchasing these cameras is to be able to provide footage similar to what you would do with a Ring camera to law enforcement in the event of a crime. And when they do have access, that is what the intent is.
So they put in the reason, and then who has to say okay?
We encourage HOAs to have a policy that states, similar to what police departments have. If there's an HOA, a neighborhood, that they, have folks reporting what searches are for, et cetera. But again, it's similar to any other cameras that a private citizen would put on their property. Right. Ring cameras, any other kind of video cameras. These are just have a license plate component to them.
So we didn't really go into this in detail, but it would seem for our police that I don't like, I mean, if it's a public-private, I don't want them to have access to any data. It should either just be the police if there's a crime, and they've put up their own cameras, but I don't want them also being able to search and say, you know, so-and-so was in our HOA, and, you know, we know Christie's license plate, and we'd like you to go search for her. Like, that to me makes me nervous. And so if they want to do their own cameras, like a Ring program, or like I have in my house, then that's one thing, but I don't want it, the idea of a public-private, unless they're going to follow our exact policy, and they're not law enforcement.
Correct. And again, they would never have access to any of the data of the cameras that the city owns or are in major arteries. Newport Beach does have an ordinance specific to LPR, so I know that's something that, you know, it's being discussed, where they do allow them for HOAs to have them on the public right of way when there's no private property, with, you know, criteria such as you're mentioning, that the data is only accessed by law enforcement, for example. So that's kind of a policy discussion on those private cameras.
Okay. Yeah, we should look at what I mean, I understand people have Ring programs, but if, and I mean this really for our police, but I think we should step cautiously before we start working on them sharing data and then us sharing data back when they still have access to it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, hold on just a second. But who, I know we're getting slightly off topic, but who has access to this at the HOA? It's just the board of the HOA?
Correct. So they would be able to, as an HOA, they would decide they would want they're purchasing cameras for their community at the entrance, their private property. That it's totally separate from the police department.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I really support taking further measures on this regarding HOAs, because this makes me deeply uncomfortable, especially as a renter who has no voice on an HOA and has lived in two so far. That's a lot. Go ahead.
I could
Mayor
just
Pro Tem.
finish on that. Some of one HOA asked to find out what our policy is, so they want to know and they want a guidance on it. So I think that is something we should look at. I know we're getting sidetracked because that's not what this real main purpose is, but just to keep this in mind that somehow that happens with the HOAs. But that was all my questions for you, and Councilmember Holstage, I thank you again for going through every single question we had, and the MOU that we're going to have with the other agencies, I think is great. And Lieutenant Hutchinson, can I just ask, so with the Raising Cane's, that was their cameras?
Well, Raising Cane's provided us with the description of what the entire incident that took place. We took the license plate and the vehicle description and had that entered into Flock at that point. And then, which is we put a description of the vehicle and the license plate in and said, where did that vehicle hit on any other cameras? And that's how we located it.
Okay, so you were able to do searches on Flock without us having the camera systems?
Correct.
Okay, and that's how all these other ones. So the shooter, the synagogue shooter, the double murder suspect, all of these were caught through Flock in the Valley?
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, the ACLU did raise issues, you know, the cost of this and that, you know, and to me, that, you know, and they also raised the issue about whether you're preventing crimes. Well, I would argue that if you're catching a shooter who was just shot in a synagogue, or somebody who has killed two people, that is an arguable case that you have prevented future crimes.
Yeah, I think the argument the ACLU that Councilmember Holstage brought up was that there is no argument or proof to show that it is a crime deterrent. Not that we catch the criminals using the system. And so, you know, our argument is, I think Chief Mill pointed out that it's possible that it's a crime deterrent, but that is not what we're...
That's not your purpose.
That's, you know, our purpose is investigative, it's reactive, it's finding the suspects in most of these circumstances, obviously after the fact.
Okay. And you mentioned about the public knowing which other agencies you share this with. How would they find this out?
That'll be on the transparency portal that I showed you, that green screen, and it's got a list of all of the names of the agencies that we will be sharing with.
Okay. I mean, I believe that all of our concerns have been addressed. I brought it this last time. I mean, the issue of privacy is very real in our society and how it's tracked. And again, I think what's in our phones and cars and watches and smart TVs, and there's a lot more data. And I am more distrustful of private companies using this data, and we've seen incidences where they've done it. So the fact that you have empirical evidence of catching criminals is of value, and I think that Councilmember Holstage has done everything possible to help protect us and our residents in the contract, the MOU, incorporating our policy, and the idea of having the regular audits and a review with the city manager, and also sort of looking at what happens with Flock, every year or two, just to make sure that we're on track with our policy. So I appreciate all the work that was put into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm still confused. How do you know that if you share this information with Cathedral City, how do you know they're not sharing it with somebody else?
Well, I guess the argument is if we have an internal employee, how do we not know? And that's to an
Right.
audit purpose, right? And then if we find out that occurred with Cathedral City or the Sheriff's Department or somebody else, through the audit process, we're going to find that out, or through a complaint, and then we would terminate our sharing with that agency.
Right, but how are you going to find out what the other agency is doing if they don't have such stringent guidelines as we do? We're putting in the effort to make these guidelines as stringent as possible, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the cities have done that.
To add some color on the way that the software would work when another user from another agency is using the system, they would still have to enter in a case number or a reference number, which would then be auditable by your police department. I think what Lieutenant Hutchinson is referring to is obviously there's an MOU agreement that their agency is saying they also agree to your policy before they're even getting access. So there's those two, there's that policy level, and then there's in the system itself, there's the check and balances that they will, just like your police officers' searches are all tracked, every single user within the Flock system.
So in order
also.
to access the information, they have to go into the Flock system. So
Correct.
for us, even though we don't currently have Flock, we have to still log into Flock to look at the data from Cathedral City or whatever agency you're looking at.
Correct,
Okay.
and they would have to enter in a reason, just the same, and it would be your officers' searches of their cameras are also auditable by them and would have to follow, and theoretically their policies.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for answering that question. Mayor Pro Tem.
If we have a MOU with another agency and they're violating the MOU, I mean, that's a pretty serious thing, right? I mean,
Yeah, I would assume so, and I'm sure that the chief can talk about this, but we've discussed this in great length, and you would terminate access immediately for an egregious malicious violation.
yeah, and that seems, it would be egregious malicious if another agency does it. Okay, so thank you, I appreciate that. And I just want to have one more question, though. Last year, City Council did approve, even though we don't get them, speed cameras. Do they just out of curiosity, do they operate the same way with data going onto the clouds? And
Most of speed cameras are maintained in some type of a cloud database, yes.
okay, so we never got those cameras, right?
No, we didn't. It didn't work out for us.
Okay, but this is why it's good to have this policy if that comes back again.
And I will say that when you're talking about cameras of that nature, they're collecting a lot more personal identifying information. They're identifying the driver. They're taking photos of the driver. Then they're identifying through NCIC the personal information of the registered owner of the vehicle and the things of that nature, which Flock is not doing.
Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, if I can, so the reason code, so specifically, can you tell us like what that looks like? Does it have to be like a drop-down menu of an authorized reason, or is it certain crimes, or does it say need to know law enforcement purpose?
So it would have to be, according to your policy, it would have to be a case number, right? So typically that will be the year, and I'm not sure what the nomenclature here is, year, a number, and then what the audit would show is every single filter that's also selected, right? And so that way, for audit purposes, they would be able to look up that case and what the search was supposed to be, right? And that's how the audit portion would work, and would also associate the specific user, time, date, et cetera, to give a full picture to anybody auditing the system.
So when we're sharing, because at first I thought this, I read the policy to mean like page 48, item 3A, it's in our Palm Springs PD policy. It's 430.10, releasing ALPR data. It says an agency has to make a written request for ALPR data, and they have to include the name and the intended purpose, etc. It makes it sound like we're doing it for discrete purpose for each incident, but in fact, what we are doing is allowing open access to our database to these other agencies. Just to be clear for the mayor, that's the ACLU, you just said is the ACLU's main concern, is that when it goes to the third party, it might be impossible to then protect that data from release. I like our solution of both the auditing and the MOU, and that allows us to get at it. And there's a lot of data about who's accessing, because I am also worried. I did domestic violence law. I'm concerned about victims being kept under surveillance and tracked. It's really common in abuse. And so the HOA cameras give me a little heartburn. And as elected officials who get death threats, like HOA cameras give me a little bit of heartburn. I want to make sure they're protected. But just so you know, so that is the main concern. And so that's what we tried to do. And they added, Lieutenant Hutch added auditing information and reporting, which I think is good. It's nice to have that, but it would be nice to know and have in our MOU, if we're just going to get a list of case numbers from Cathedral City, like or RSO, like what is the actual data we're going to get for those code reasons, right? Because it's pretty easy to put in a code. And
Just to be clear on that, council member, not only would they put in my mind at least, the case number, but they'd also have to have the right and the need to know. You just can't make up a case number and throw it in
Right.
there and say, I would like to have this information on Andy Mills. And as well as there has to be reasonable suspicion that a crime has been or will be committed. So it's just not a free-for-all.
Right.
It is, the goal of it is to be as tight as possible.
Thank you. And I remember in our meeting with PSPD and the city attorney, we did find one instance on that same page, page 48, 430.10, the MOU language. It says MOUs will provide that access will only be used for legitimate law enforcement or public safety purposes. It sounds like to me the public safety purposes is probably too broad. Public safety could be as Christy doing karaoke at Peabody's, and that's a public safety hazard because my voice is so bad. You don't want to hear me doing karaoke, right? So it sounds like there was consensus to eliminate the or public safety purposes and just put legitimate law enforcement purposes. And I don't work for the police department, but I would love to see like the probable cause or suspicion, or that those standards is what the ACLU was asking for, because the ACLU was saying, well, what are the limits? Like, what are the crimes or the codes you're going to list? Your policy sort of does give the chief a lot of power because it doesn't clarify when the chief could share out of state or could share with other agencies. It's not just a warrant. So anyway, cleaning up at least that language would be helpful so that we have some protections with with the other agencies that we're giving this data to. I know I've spent too much time on this, but can I just spend a little bit more? And I know Councilmember Middleton, the public asked about where the cameras are selected and located, and I really appreciate for the public on page 17 of the staff report, you put the locations, proposed locations. There was a concern about targeting communities of color or low-income people or immigrants. Can you just speak to why you chose the locations? And then we heard a public comment about what if a neighborhood says, no, we don't want this near my house or my neighborhood? What would that process look like?
And I'm sorry, I don't remember that map. I don't know if that maps the locations, but we can certainly disclose that, which is the entrance.
There's proposed
Oh, there's a
placement.
proposed one.
It
Very good.
primarily is entrance and exits of the city, but there are some internally to the city.
So the 15 that we're looking at Highway 111, Indian Canyon, Gene Autry, Vista Chino, Ramon, Dinah Shore, and East Palm Canyon. And those are the entrances and exits to the city in those different locations, again, as mapped there. We specifically talked about, yes, there's language that says you can repurpose those cameras and move them into neighborhoods. We've had very specific talks with some neighborhoods in the community because of ongoing violence, and they were wholeheartedly against placing these type of cameras in their neighborhood, so we didn't do it. And that technology was not used, LPR was not used for that. So this is a community and council and police department responsibility to work together for these scenarios to make the decision if that's the appropriate technology in those, whether it's LPRs or some other form of technology. But building that community trust is absolutely critical.
So what does the policy say about neighborhood approval process? I think it says we will work with the neighborhood, and that's, I think, what we would want to leave it to the city manager and council and police chief and
yeah,
community.
it's very, very simple in that, but nothing in greater detail.
Thanks. And then really quick, the policy also defines footage for Flock's terms and conditions, and it defines footage as still images, video, audio, and other data. I've talked to Flock and PD, and it sounds like these are only collecting images and other data, location data, but not collecting and do not have the capacity to collect video or audio. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I don't know if we keep that out because we're not collecting, and we take that out of it's just the terms and conditions, so definitions, it might not matter, but just for the public, if that's what you're worried about. And then I have one other question for Flock. So in the data use and licensing, it says irrevocable, it says this like 3 times, irrevocable worldwide license to use the customer data and perform all acts as may be necessary for Flock to provide the Flock customer services. So it says, sorry, customer, we are giving you a limited, non-exclusive, royalty-free, irrevocable, blah, 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 to our data. So, we've been talking about who owns our data, ensuring that Palm Springs owns our data, ensuring we control our data, and we're not giving it to other agencies without an MOU. So can you just clarify what you mean by that language?
Definitely, and I'll defer to your attorney. We did have conversations, our legal team and your legal team, kind of making sure, that definitions were agreed upon there. What that means is that it allows Flock in an anonymized way, if there's a vehicle that is seen by a camera that's never been seen before by our system, example, a brand new Rivian, it will be stripped of any identifiers saying this image came from Palm Springs, but it will, our team will then analyze that image and be able to tag it so that the machine learning in the future would be able to identify that vehicle. That's important because every single month, every single couple of weeks, there is a new vehicle out there, and so in order to make sure that the machine learning algorithm is up to date, that is the way that you do it.
So sorry to interrupt you. So you're using that for AI, for machine learning.
Correct.
So to our city attorney on that page 28, for data use and licensing, 4.1 has that language, 4.2 has that language. I know you worked on 4.3 for what they're using for anonymized data, which is using for machine learning for you or AI to learn about a new Rivian, but not to look at what bumper stickers I have or whatever it is. So, but it's still in 4.1 and 4.2. Does this not say that they control our data?
It says that they can use our data, but it's specifically caveated by the following language, which says to provide us with services. So we're contracting with Flock to get services. They are saying we need your data to provide you services. So that language in 4.0 and 4.1 is saying the city is giving them access to our data so that they can provide us the service.
But doesn't that sort of give them a lot of control over our data to use our data? Like, shouldn't it just say, that's too broad for me to provide Flock services to customer? Or you think this, you feel comfortable that this language still means that we own our data, we control our data, they can't share it, all of those policy considerations that I discussed?
Yes.
Okay. That sounds good. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then just, I said it, but one last thing. On that last page of the policy I mentioned, that I think I ripped out to show the lieutenant. In the PSPD policy, it says that we won't use it for immigration enforcement, and I would really like to see it include like the other types of crimes or potential crimes that the chief mentioned for public policy reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion and a second on this item? Councilmember DeHart.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work and effort and everybody's involvement in getting the questions answered. And just so the public knows, I had seen the presentation from the lieutenant previously and was able to get a lot of questions answered. And I appreciate the work that PD has put into bringing more information to the community and to all the residents that spoke out in favor. I'm not hearing what my colleagues are hearing, the opposition and the comments from the public. Overwhelming comments after our last council meeting in support of the system and supporting the police department. So I appreciate the residents speaking out and sharing their feelings with me after our last meeting. And I fully support the measure.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor. If we can have a second. Oh, Councilmember Middleton.
Would like to make a comment, please?
Sure.
Thank you. So I thank my colleagues for all of the questions and that they've asked, and I want to thank the police department for the work that has gone into this. My motion to approve this is enthusiastic. I am very, very pleased that our police department has brought forward this new tool that I believe will greatly assist our police department in apprehending violent criminals. It has already been proven. So I look forward to voting yes and look forward to having this technology available to our police officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Does that motion include the request that Councilmember Holstage just made regarding the policy proposals?
It does.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Holstage.
And the change of language that I discussed about taking out public safety purposes and just having legitimate law enforcement purposes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We can take a vote. Okay, motion passes 4-1. At this time, we will move to public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. Although the City Council values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. 2 minutes will be assigned to each speaker. We will begin with Diane McAlpine, followed by Zachary Daniel Stone. Your time has begun. You can speak now. It's on.
All right. Good evening. 1 square mile of tribal-owned land called Section 14 had no city services. On that land were shacks and sheds, trailers and mud huts, stray dogs, rodents, piles of debris, burning trash, and open pits, despite sudden desert winds threatening wildfires. No sewers, unsafe and unsanitary. Ultimately, the city of Palm Springs convinced the Tribal Council to consider U.S. Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs slum abatement resources to eradicate blight. Then the tribe got enthusiastic. They realized that a makeover would create a better lease income opportunity, and so the tribal landlords decided to terminate any rental agreements and posted 30-day eviction notices everywhere. Over a period of many months, announcements were widely publicized and discussed, and most tenants cooperated and packed up. Yet some simply refused to heed the notices, holding out to the bitter end until the bulldozers arrived, hoping somehow they could force tribal owners to relent from taking back possession of their own land, daring the tribe to seize their homes. But the tribe stood firm and would not surrender their land. For the tenants, of course, it was devastating, especially for the children who were unaware of the standoff some parents were staging. Eviction dissolved their sense of community. They didn't want to vacate their homes, however humble. It was cheap and they were happy, so leaving was going to hurt. But eventually, casinos, resorts, and golf courses would mean good jobs and prosperity. So I question whether some descendants of tenants, please don't call them survivors, are being egged on by opportunistic advocates in an attempt to shake down good-hearted Palm Springs citizens because decades ago, tribal elders decided to remake their own land, replacing a shantytown with a resort. So to sum up, maybe we just need to stop blaming others for tough times. It means if we get evicted from land we don't own because the owner decides to do something different, we take our lumps and move on. It was sweet while it lasted. Low rent, no regulations, no ordinances, no building codes, no citations, no penalties, and no fines. Then one day it was over. For Section 14 tenants, sadly, the days of cheap rent and no rules were gone. The city had matured and
Thank
reinvented
you.
itself.
That's your 2 minutes. Thank you very much. The next comment is Zachary Daniel Stone, followed by Dominic Moonhart. I gave you an additional 15 seconds as well.
All right. Well, see, got Robert Rules of Order. Was able to check that out. Guess what? The 12th edition was the only one that was there. It was nice. There's 2 11th editions. Both of them were checked out. Huh. I was like, yeah. Don't know what was going on there, but I thought it was pretty cool. Let's see. Establish a homeless and affordable housing task force or committee. You can do that. You guys can do that. You know something? You might not. You got a minute, 20 seconds here. So I was on the city's website. Is there a rent commission? Is there one that's on the website? Is there one that the city has? Do you guys know?
Because of the Brown Act, we're not able to reply to you during public comment.
All right, I know, it's great. 1 minute left here. Yeah, I was like, wow, looking that up, I seen the last time they met, whether they even had anyone was appointed on there. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Interesting stuff. Just wasn't sure if you guys were aware of it or not, you know. All right, let's see, this I found this book here. We got 35 seconds here. Foolproof. The other day, the recommendation was for the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I believe the name of it was. This one's Foolproof. Why misinformation infects our minds and how to build immunity. I haven't really got into this one yet, but it's like a good one. All right, guys. As always. Oh man, the camera's off. Looking for that weed money. There we go.
Thank you. That's your time. Next comment is Dominic Moonhart, followed by Brad Anderson.
Morning, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. I'm here today to address the City Council and its districts. I do support districts, and I congratulate Mayor Pro Tem Quintanilla in Palm Desert for finally getting districts. But I was looking at the Dave's redistricting map. I have these papers. All of you guys should have them. I was looking at your 5 districts, and 2 of your districts have 9,000 people living in them, and then 3 of your districts have 8,000 people living in them. I used the Dave's redistricting map to try to even out the population, but instead of using 5 districts, I was using 6 districts. I know some people are opposed to having a mayor at large. I am not one of them. But I am not looking or forcing anyone to do anything, but I want you guys to look at these and see if having 6 districts would be benefit to your city, to our city. There's a couple cities in Southern California, Oxnard, Anaheim, Costa Mesa, Garden Grove, Santa Ana, and Orange City, who use 6 districts and a mayor at large. I request the city council to look into this, see if you guys are all in an agreement to have a charter amendment, if you want to have 6 districts with the mayor at large. Thank you very much. I will yield my time.
Thank you so much. Next commenter is Brad Anderson.
Hello, Brad Anderson, City of Ransom Ross. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I just wanted to ask you, the last item you had that you voted on, it was predictable. I mean, I've gone to enough of these meetings. I just didn't know who the lone wolf would be, but there's always somebody that's going to be a martyr for their community. So I'm disappointed, but I knew how it was going to take place. But I just wanted to speak about the rules of order was brought up. I noticed there's no agenda. I wanted to look at the agenda packet, but I don't see any. And again, you mentioned the Brown Act violation or Brown Act, and that's one of the Brown Act things. You should have that available for the public to look at, and not have to go request it wherever it is, if it's here at all. And urgency clause, that was predictable. It could have been a revised agenda. It could have been a late submission. I could have been notified earlier, especially that resolution you wrote. I could have seen that. You probably would have had more people here. And I don't think it is an urgency clause, because that could have waited. I'm just disappointed that a tragedy like that is being maybe politically used by 2 of the council members for their election, or for their proposed, or what do you call it, considered running for election. It's a long time away. They may not do that. But again, I'm just disappointed in how this city council is operating, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. Just to interrupt you, sorry. I noticed you're going to go to closed session again. Will you be reporting out? And if you are, I will wait. Thank you.
Yes, we will be reporting out. Thank you. We do have one additional public comment that was sent in and requested to be read at this time. So I'll read it. This is Roy Clark. I'm writing for myself, even though I'm a long-time Sustainability Commission member. Most of you know me. I recognize that the council has made an effort to decrease the time that it takes for permits to be approved by the building department by hiring a consultant. However, I'm still waiting for approval of a permit to add solar panels to my house. It's been nearly 3 months since I signed a contract with Sunrun, and a permit request was submitted to the city. I've totally missed any opportunity to save on the high cost of electricity during the hot summer months and reduce my carbon footprint. Please correct this problem promptly. Thank you. All right. With that, the next item is City Council and City Manager requests for upcoming agenda development. City Manager, do you want to take us, or do you want to lead us off on this one?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, you'll note that we'll have our normal list of consent items, but at our next meeting, we will focus on a presentation from Team Rubicon, who did a lot of work assisting people during Tropical Storm Hillary, and they were going to talk a little bit about some of the services they provide in the community. We'll be, of course, coming back with the food truck ordinance for your consideration, and then per our earlier discussion about cannabis and regulations going forward with the cannabis industry, we'll be bringing that report back to you. You'll see on November 9th, we will be arranging for COD, to College of the Desert, to come forward and give us an update on the work that they're doing. And there's been work done on a catalytic converter ordinance to protect theft of catalytic converters. So that's it for right now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have additional requests or comments from our council members at this time? Councilmember Holstage.
Thank you. I'd like to request, I meant to include it in the motion, but we move quickly. I'd like to request a agenda item, or an agenda item from staff about the flock cameras with HOAs and bringing forward a policy that, working with our police department and others, to ensure that we're getting the best possible policies when HOAs are using these cameras, instead of having right now, it seems like almost no regulation. And I know we have, staff shared with me that we have encroachment permits to put these cameras in the public right away, if that's right now. And we've approved some, and we have some in the hopper. So I'd very much like us to consider a policy to regulate that if there's majority support.
Thank you very much. I support that. I believe I heard Mayor Pro Tem also support that during our discussion. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Couple things. I did realize after the last meeting, it may not have been clear that I also attended the League of California Cities, and I do want to make sure I reported on that and attended several robust presentations on housing and economic development. Also, Councilmember Holstage and I had our Business Retention and Economic Development Subcommittee the other week, and we talked about a number of topics, but one of the topics that arose was the creation of commercial districts. These are not business improvement districts, but just identifying districts, such as we have with Arenas. And there's no financial commitment. It's basically for identification, marketing, and coordination and representation of the businesses. Deputy City Manager Flynn Fagg suggested that the commercial districts be established in a format similar to 1PS, and he suggested, I know he's not here, that, and I think he also mentioned it to the city manager, that I bring this up at council, that we move, that they prepare an ordinance with the intent of bringing forward this for discussion to city council of creation of commercial districts, an ordinance similar to 1PS. And he did not think it would be that intensive amount of work of staff time.
Thank you
Council.
very much. Do we have support for that item by members of council? I'm seeing a agreement. Okay, there's at least 3.
And I have one more question, one more
Go
thing.
ahead.
I know, and we may bring this up after the COD presentation, but I'm not sure. I thought there was if we have, look at who our council liaisons and subcommittee is on the COD as we move forward. They gave one presentation to one group, the other about their plans to open in a few years. And I think as important as it is to our city, our council should be actively involved in addition to staff on the project. So we can discuss that, I guess, after the November 9th.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Councilmember Middleton.
All right, thank you. Just one very quick comment. On Tuesday of this week in Orlando, Florida, at the American Public Transit Association annual conference, Sunline Transit Agency received an award as the best transit agency for ridership under 3 million riders per annum in the United States. My congratulations to Mona Bubuda, the CEO, and all of the staff at Sunline for their work and the recognition of the excellence of their work.
Thank you very much. Councilmember DeHart.
Thank you, Mayor. A little concern was raised after our last meeting and the presentation by Special Programs about the oversaturation of our cannabis dispensaries, in particular on Palm Canyon, and that her department is going to come to council with some suggestions. And we also discussed that the mayor and pro tem are working on updates to the cannabis ordinance. In knowing that this is all going to take time, I would like to see that we put a pause on issuing any dispensary permits until we get the ordinance revised and we hear from Special Programs about their concerns on oversaturation and what their solutions are.
I support that.
Thank you. So we have sorry, we have 2 members in support of pausing
Can we pause
cannabis items. No, you have to bring back the item.
Correct.
What we're asking for right now is there support to make
bring
that
back,
pause? Yes.
Okay.
So I believe, Mayor Pro Tem, is that something that
Yeah, that's.
you want to talk about?
That's what we're going to talk about, and I think we're going to talk about it with the city manager and code compliance in advance of October 26th. So, without having a discussion on it, there are various points which hopefully will be in this presentation for city council to discuss, that I think address a lot of the concerns that have been raised over the past year by council.
For the city manager or city attorney, during that cannabis discussion on October 26th, would there be a possibility, if it was the pleasure of council, to have a pause on new cannabis permits at that time?
Yes, if you give me the direction to bring back the ordinance, I can.
Okay. It's an ordinance
It would be an ordinance, yes.
to do a moratorium?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I see 2 in support and 3 to do that. And it would make sense to do it at that time. Okay,
One more.
go ahead.
And, you know, we frequently hear concern about our parks and the use of the parks and accessibility for families and functionality for families. I just think with the importance of, and the concern especially that was raised tonight about parks and recs, that, you know, we elevate the conversation a little bit more, and knowing that we've got a master plan that's being prepared for parks, and that, you know, there's an idea for having a celebration and to enhance Sunrise Park in particular. I think it would be important for council to be able to receive an update every 60 days, 70 days on the progress of the master plan and what general advancements are happening in our parks. Because right now I wouldn't be able to tell somebody what the good things are that are happening in the park that we may not know outside of the restrooms or a shade structure. And it would be nice to be able to stay on top of the progress that we would be making on all of our parks.
Thank you very much. There's just a request to have more progress reports about what's going on with our projects. And in general, I know that this council has has requested that in the past, not just on parks, but just other issues that we're working on to get some updates periodic updates during council meetings. So I think that's appropriate.
I'm putting a date specific that I would like to make sure it happens.
Sure.
So I'm asking council that we make sure that we're getting that report and we put a date on it so we can expect it maybe it's even 90 days, but that there is a time-specific report coming back to us.
City manager, okay, I'm hearing whispers of quarterly report. City manager, what do you think is appropriate in terms of making sure that staff has the time to do the work that they're doing, but also to give us feedback?
Yeah,
I want to have that balance.
Yeah, Madam Mayor and members of council, whether it's 60 days or 90 days, I think either one can work for us. We had a great discussion with the people for Palm Springs Parks today. They've had some great ideas for helping us talk about how our departments need to coordinate together. And actually, they were some good suggestions, and Assistant City Manager and I want to follow up on those. It's just good coordination that we should be doing with the Parks Commission, certainly as well as City Council. So as it pleases council, we'll come back quarterly or whatever works for you. But we're going to be following up on some other tasks related to that discussion anyway. So this is all helpful. Thank
you very much. So since we don't have this on our agenda at this time, we can't decide what those dates, how often those would come to us. It needs to be put on an agenda in order for us to have that discussion about exactly when those progress reports would come to us.
Okay, the city attorney advises me we'll come back to you with a policy on how quickly, a policy for updates, and we'll do that in conjunction with you and the commission. So we'll bring that back for you.
Thank you very much. And just so the public knows, because of the Brown Act, there are requirements in terms of what we're able to discuss And we have to be very conscious of how we discuss items, when we discuss items, even though they might seem minor. They do require to be agendized. Councilmember DeHart, did you have any additional?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much to the rest of the council for all of your comments and requests. Thank you to city staff regarding the Team Rubicon request. They do a lot of work that I think they often they're one of those groups that doesn't always tell people what they're doing. They just go ahead and do it. So I think it's important that they're asking for time to speak to us so that we all are aware of the work that they're doing and we can use them as needed. I do have a request of council that we look at creating a specific plan for the northern portion of the city of Palm Springs. As many of you know, there was a College Park specific plan that was created. It was really more of a landscaping plan, and that was when COD was going to be in that northern plot. And there's some good ideas that are in that, but there's an opportunity because of just the growth in that area and also the interest in creating more benefits for the community throughout our city, and especially in an area that doesn't have as many economic opportunities, businesses, and is in need of more housing, that we can get together to make a specific plan, just as we did with the downtown specific plan in other areas of our city, to really dig into an area that needs that support, and that there are numerous projects already in the works that I think we could make better if we're connecting the dots and attracting additional businesses and developers to make it more substantial. So if there's support for that, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem strongly supports that. Thank you. So we have support from council on that, and we really appreciate staff working on that and making sure that all of our residents in Palm Springs feel heard and seen in the work that we're doing. Just a couple of announcements. The State of the City is on Tuesday, October 17th at the Palm Springs Art Museum in the Annenberg Theater. There is a reception at 5 p.m. that is $80. However, at 6 p.m. is when we begin the presentation, and that is free. So at 6 p.m., anyone that wants to come and just watch the presentation is invited to come to the Annenberg Theater and watch the presentation. There will be some community awards that will be given. The Gay Men's Chorus will be singing, and there will be a council video that's always actually very nice. I will be giving a presentation. It will be short, I promise. So then we can all go and watch Scream at the Camelot Theater afterwards. And the next item that I want to mention is, again, the Palm Springs Homecoming Parade. It's Wednesday, October 18th, and it's at 3:30 p.m. downtown Palm Springs. It's also my 20-year high school reunion that coming weekend, and the students at Palm Springs High decided that I get to be the grand marshal for the parade. So my 16-year-old self would be absolutely thrilled that I'm the grand marshal of the homecoming parade as the mayor. It all feels very surreal right now. So thank you to Palm Springs High School students for giving me that honor. All right, at this time, we will adjourn into closed session, and we will be back to report out, hopefully by no later than 9:30, but we will see. Thank you all.